Chapter 828. The players from the 10 Guilds Alliance, who had rushed over in a hurry, were no match for the Eagle Legion. They had no positioning and their attacks weren't coordinated. All they could do was rush over as fast as they could, and then hurriedly cast their skills as soon as they were within attack range. Then, they saw the Eagle Legion taking the brunt of his skills and pouncing on him, knocking him to the ground. In this chaotic situation, he didn't even know who he had contributed his PK points to. A warrior tried to use Charge and Whirlwind Slash to disrupt the opponent's formation. In the end, when he activated Charge, a warrior in the opponent's formation also stepped forward and used Charge to resist. After the system judgment, the poor warrior of the 10 Meetings Alliance was kite like a kite. Everyone was naturally shocked. After the judgment, the party with the higher attack had the upper hand, but the damage of the party with the lower attack was not negligible. At this time, the party that collided with the warrior was actually sent flying by the charge. It was as if he did not attack at all. This could only mean that the difference in damage between the two charges was too great. In the end, after the warrior of the Eagle party used Charge, he suddenly flew into the air with his swords in both hands, paused for a moment, and then quickly fell into the 10 Meetings Alliance's formation. 2 streaks of sword light cut through the formation, and the ground trembled. Players with enough PK points could appreciate this skill from the pursuing system guards. Earth-shattering slash. Not only did this skill deal AoE damage, but it also had a chance to stun. However, the chance was not high, and the players around the warrior were obviously still controlling themselves. But before they could react, the warrior had already swung his 2 swords, and swept up a huge whirlwind slash in their formation. Under the sword light, white light danced. The players of the Eagle party very tacitly split into 2, and went around the range of the warrior's whirlwind slash from the left and right sides. The players who did not die under the whirlwind slash were killed by them, and then regrouped at the other end of the team and continued to kill the 10 Meetings Alliance players. The players of the 10 Meetings Alliance had finally gathered, but they could not hold their ground. The Eagle party's ambush had wiped out 37 of their members. Including their party leader, the remaining 63 members were like headless flies. They were no different from NPC monsters. The only smart thing was that when they realized that the situation wasn't looking good, some of them decided to run without hesitation. Of course, the warriors and priests knew that the ones running away were either thieves or archers. They expressed their heroic spirit that they would rather die than cower in the face of danger. Hold on, brothers. I'm going to call for reinforcements. Good brother, when it comes to asking for reinforcements, just send a message. We will advance and retreat together here. Such touching conversations were not uncommon. It could be seen that even the hot-blooded and heroic Moonlit Night City had some wretched existences. The call for help had been sent out a long time ago, and Yun Zhongmu had already led his troops back. But when he arrived at Moon Street, everything was over. This was just an online game. There wouldn't be blood on the ground, nor would there be corpses. There would only be peace. But for the largest market street in Moonlit Night City, silence was the scariest atmosphere. In front of everyone's eyes, not a single person from the 10 Meetings Alliance's shopping group survived. All of them were killed by the 30-man team that suddenly appeared. The players of Moonlit Night City were quite discerning when it came to PvP. They could tell that the 30-man team was top-notch in terms of skills, equipment, coordination, and awareness. It wasn't strange to see 1 or 2 of these players, but 30 of them had appeared at the same time. Everyone was trying to guess where they came from. At this moment, the players were still standing on both sides of the street discussing amongst themselves, as if they had forgotten why they were here. Yun Zhongmu's expression was steely. He had just said in the guild chat that this was just a 30-man mercenary group. They weren't worth anything and wouldn't dare to fight against their 100-man team. But then, Eagle's team gathered together and annihilated the 100-man team of the 10 Meetings Alliance. Objective reasons such as the quality of their members and the coordination of their tactics were all useless. This was a huge slap in the face to the morale that Yun Zhongmu had just said, "Forever, huh?" Yun Zhongmu muttered this name. Since this person was the team leader, then the strategies of Eagle's team should have been set up by him. This person clearly had a good sense of strategy. His attacks didn't just annihilate 100 people. These attacks created a huge pressure that was difficult to deal with. Those bastards from Eagle's team, they were all gone by the time I arrived, Yun Zhongmu said in the guild chat. How many people can recognize these bastards? Yun Zhongmu yelled. He decided to take the initiative. If they continued to defend passively, they would really die. Eagle's team didn't wear masks. After so many attacks, many people remembered some of their faces and spoke up in the guild chat. Alright, you guys listen up. Take off your guild badges and walk around the city. Pay attention to the streets near the revival point. If you find any of them, send a private message to the guild leader, Yun Zhongmu instructed. Sending a private message to the guild leader was Yun Zhongmu's counter-espionage tactic. He wasn't afraid of the enemy finding out. However, whether or not he found them, he couldn't let the news leak out. The guild leaders of all 10 guilds were trustworthy people. Yun Zhongmu told them to notify the guild leader when they found them. Then, they would find reliable people to organize an attack. Even killing 1 or 2 of the enemy's players was fine. That way, they wouldn't be so passive and they wouldn't be so nervous. His eyes and ears began to spread out to search for the whereabouts of Eagle's team members. Yun Zhongmu began to choose trustworthy people to fight with. The brothers who had been with him for a long time were naturally trustworthy. Yun Zhongmu even had a bit of blind trust in them. Zhu Xian, the first strategist, and the others were often scolded and looked down upon by Yun Zhongmu. However, if these people really became the enemy's spies, Yun Zhongmu wouldn't be able to scold them at all. These people were obviously added to the team by Yun Zhongmu. Then, he thought of some reliable people and even sent people offline to call for reinforcements. Although Yun Zhongmu felt that there were many people he could trust, it was hard to predict a person's heart. The more people there were, the greater the risk. After gathering around 150 people, Yun Zhongmu felt that it was about time. Although the 100-man team had been badly beaten on Moonlight Street, there were many objective factors. Yun Zhongmu believed that the hot-blooded team that he personally led could rival any 30-man team in the game, apart from Qinli's drunk. Just as he was gathering his men, the spies he sent out suddenly reported back. They found Eagle's team near the Thieves' Guild. I only recognized one person, but there are 3 others with him, the spies said. What are they doing? I don't know. I think they're just walking around, the spies replied. Can you keep an eye on them? They haven't found me yet, the spies said. Okay, keep an eye on them. Be careful, we'll be there soon. Yun Zhongmu quickly gathered his men. Of course, 150 people couldn't be coincidentally in the same place, but there were only 4 of them. There was no need for 150 people. Plus, they couldn't miss this opportunity. As a result, 54 people gathered as quickly as possible and rushed towards the Thieves' Guild. They're on the 3rd street of the Thieves' Guild. They turned to the 2nd street. They turned back to the square. They entered the 4th street again. I think they're just randomly looking to see if they can bump into our people. The spies continued to report while making some analysis. Hee, they'll find them soon. Zhu Xian smiled lewdly. Following the spies' directions, they had already reached the 4th street. Describe the 4 of them, Yun Zhongmu said. 1 knight, 1 warrior, 1 thief, and 1 priest, the spies replied. Oh, they don't have any long-range professions. We can easily kill them. The first-generation tactician started talking nonsense. Duan Yun, take half of your men and enter from this side. I'll take a detour and intercept them from that side. Yun Zhongmu arranged a strategy. It can't be that bad, old Yun. There's only 1 thief out of the 4. The other 3 can't run even if they want to, so why do we need to intercept them? Just send a few people to the other side. Duan Yun said. Yun Zhongmu thought about it and felt that it made sense. There really wasn't a need to split half of his men just to deal with 1 thief. As a result, he randomly picked a few thieves and archers to go around. After the arrangements were made, Yun Zhongmu waved his hand and a group of brothers rushed into the Thieves' Guild's 4th street with murderous intent. This was just an ordinary street. There weren't too many people, but there weren't too few either. Players who liked to do business near the revival point would usually set up their stalls in the plaza outside the Thieves' Guild instead of here. This was a purely passageway. The only people coming and going were players who were in a hurry. They all rushed forward as fast as they could. Even though there were only 4 of them, Yun Zhongmu didn't let his guard down. After entering the street, he arranged for everyone to stand in formation and advance. Zhu Xian said a few words of arrogance, which naturally drew another wave of curses. The group walked along the street for nearly halfway. They gradually saw 4 players on the left side of the street, 2 in front and 2 behind. They were casually walking towards them. They were too far away and couldn't use identify, but looking at their equipment, they completely matched the 4 classes of warrior, knight, thief, and priest. Spread out a bit, spread out a bit. Walk slowly, Cloud Twilight ordered. The other side should recognize him, but Yun Zhongmu was a thief. Covering his face was both safe and reasonable, so he wasn't afraid of alerting them. As for recognizing the guild emblem, the other side clearly didn't have an archer. By the time they recognized the emblem, Yun Zhongmu and the others had already pounced on them. The street was very quiet, and the channel was also very quiet. Once the battle started, even Zhu Xian didn't dare to make any noise. Everyone left the channel to the commander, Yun Zhongmu. 50 meters, 40 meters, 30 meters. The other side was getting closer and closer. Yun Zhongmu could feel the sweat on his palms. He sneaked a glance at the brothers on his left and right. They were all walking quite casually. At this moment, they didn't seem to be in any battle formation. Unless they could recognize the guild emblem from this far away, they wouldn't be able to tell that they were on the same side. Why aren't we being more careful? Maybe we should take off the emblem. Yun Zhongmu suddenly felt very uneasy. They were facing a great enemy, but they still wanted to wear the emblem to take revenge. Wasn't that a little too childish? But if he asked everyone to take it off, wouldn't it attract attention? Yun Zhongmu was still thinking about this small detail, but they were getting closer and closer to the enemy. Finally, someone in the channel couldn't help but remind him, "Old Yun, are we attacking now? They don't seem to have noticed us. Are we waiting for them to walk into our formation and then suddenly attack? Won't we be able to surround them that way?" Yun Zhongmu, who was walking in front, could already see the 4 faces clearly. Seeing that they didn't seem to have noticed, Yun Zhongmu suddenly felt conflicted. It's just against 4 people. Am I being a little too cautious? Yun Zhongmu had already brushed past the 4 people. He immediately had this self-mocking thought. Just as he was about to give the order to attack, he suddenly realized that in front of him, there were players coming towards him. Some were walking, some were running, and all of them were moving so naturally. They were practically the same as his group. Yun Zhongmu suddenly realized something and shouted in the channel, "Not good, we've been tricked." What? Everyone stared at the channel and was just about to yell at Yun Zhongmu to attack, but who would have thought that Yun Zhongmu would suddenly say something like this? Immediately after, Yun Zhongmu roared again, "Kill these 4." Everyone had been waiting for these words. Even though they didn't understand why Yun Zhongmu had been tricked, they had been preparing for a long time to attack these 4 people. Yun Zhongmu's group of old friends were naturally experienced in killing people. They stood at the front and didn't rush to attack. Instead, they directly brushed past the opponents, first cutting off their path of retreat. The players behind them stood in front of them and prevented them from moving forward. The ones who were truly the main attackers were the ones furthest away from the 4 people. They were the mages and archers who had long-range attacks. There were people blocking the front and back, and the gap in the middle would be accurately attacked by the mages and archers. The only way out was to quickly clear out the players blocking them. Of course, this wasn't that easy. Yun Zhongmu's trusted friends weren't that easy to deal with. However, these 4 people didn't seem to want to do so. The cleric among the 4 suddenly raised his staff. Yun Zhongmu, who wasn't far from them, heard him shout, "Mana barrier." A wave of white light suddenly spread out, instantly condensing into a small ball with a diameter of 3 meters. The other 3 people also stood beside the cleric, and the 4 of them entered the ball of light. The heavenly fire wheel descended, but was blocked outside the ball of light. The flaming 3,000 layers flame rose from the ground, but was also blocked outside the 3-meter diameter. Only the arrows of the archers seemed to have encountered nothing. They directly passed through the ball of light and struck the 4 people. However, the warrior immediately raised his shield and blocked all the arrows. This mana barrier was clearly ineffective against physical attacks. Moreover, after this wave of magic attacks, the light of the ball of light dimmed a lot. At this moment, the cleric was still holding his staff without moving. It was clear that this was a spell that needed to be maintained for a long period of time. Continue attacking. Yun Zhongmu roared. He estimated that this spell wouldn't last for long. I didn't expect Boss Yun to come personally. Yun Zhongmu heard a voice beside his ear. He saw that one of the 4 knights had actually taken the initiative to walk out of the mana barrier and attack him with his sword. Forever! Cloud Twilight dodged to the side, dodging the sword. The opponent's speed shocked him. This was definitely an attack that had added points into agility. Yun Zhongmu had never encountered a knight like this before. Not bad. After replying, Eternal raised his hand and cast a spell. Yun Zhongmu felt his body tighten. Then he saw a jet-black sword flash towards him. Yun Zhongmu hurriedly dodged again, but this time, his movements were actually a bit slower. Dark Knight. Yun Zhongmu was also a knowledgeable person. Before level 40, the knight profession had some blessing skills that strengthened the player's attributes. However, after the profession change at level 40, the Radiant Knight's blessing skills would be strengthened, while the Dark Knight's blessing skills would be greatly weakened. In this way, the Dark Knight skills before level 40 were basically useless. This clearly didn't make sense. As such, after the profession change, the player could choose to change their skills from Darkness Corruption, Blessing to Curse. This was a free choice question. The player could continue to be a blessing and not a curser. There were quite a few Dark Knights who kept their blessing skills temporarily. According to their research, curses were more useful in PvP. As for leveling up, a half-baked blessing was much more useful than a curse. Of course, there were Dark Knights who used curses in Twilight's guild. His movements had suddenly slowed down. Evidently, his agility had been cursed. After dodging the sword, he looked at his stats page. As expected, his agility had been weakened. Eternal's Knight had obviously added points into agility. The Knight profession was balanced. There were no advantages or disadvantages in any of the attributes, so there was no harm in adding anything. Yun Zhongmu had seen many that added points into Constitution and Intelligence. He had also seen those that added points into agility, but he had never seen one that added as much as Eternal. This was because after being cursed, he discovered that his speed was actually not as fast as Eternal's. Being unable to rely on speed to fight was fatal for an assassin. Yun Zhongmu's heart hardened. He simply rushed forward and shouted to his other brothers, "Fight!" Before, everyone had not realized why Yun Zhongmu was tricked, but now they knew why they had to fight. Because their opponents weren't just 4 people, but 30 people. A whole 30 people. The casual crowd on the street was just as pretentious as them. As soon as the battle began, they had already quickly rushed forward. This was a trap. Yun Zhongmu thought of guarding against a mole, but he did not expect the mole to directly pretend to be an informant and directly send out false information to lure them over. It could be said that he had betrayed them to the end. On one side were the 50 elites of the 10 Guilds Alliance, and on the other side were the 30 who could be counted as elites in the entire game. Although Yun Zhongmu had the advantage in numbers, he had to admit that they were the ones who needed to fight. Butterfly Knot. I just didn't write a summary yesterday. There were actually many comrades who were concerned about what happened to me in private messages. Sigh, there's really no way. Chapter 829. Both sides were battle teams that had been planning for a long time. Their originally scattered and unorganized positions suddenly adjusted at this moment. Both sides used the most common formation in PvP, front guard, back archer, 2 wings, thieves free to move around. However, Cloud Twilight wasn't free at all. After his agility was lowered by Eternal Curse, he was immediately suppressed. Cloud Twilight wanted to turn around and return to his own team, but he couldn't get away. Eternal Curse's sword flashed like black lightning. The sword was clearly not an ordinary weapon. Adding on the bonus damage from the Dark Paladin, even if it was just a normal attack, Cloud Twilight didn't dare to casually block it. The people who had wanted to cut off the 4's path of retreat were now in an awkward situation. Not only had they cut off the 3's path of retreat, but the 3 had also cut off their path of retreat. These two small groups of people wanted to return to their original positions, so they became the first to engage in close combat. However, the others weren't much slower. In an instant, the entire street was filled with the sounds of all sorts of skills being exchanged. As expected of the top players on the level rankings. Every one of them had a skill that normal players hadn't seen before. As soon as they started fighting, the 10-guild alliance didn't know what to do. However, the brothers that Yun Zhongmu personally led were also ruthless. Even though they were at a disadvantage in terms of strength, they didn't have any intention of retreating. The entire group of people charged forward despite the unknown skills that they didn't know about. They wanted to get close to the enemy and create a situation where they outnumbered them. The Eagle group was clearly not prepared for this group of people's bravery. They had been fighting with the 10-guild alliance for a long time, and they had always had the upper hand. The 30 of them had been showing off their might the entire time, but now, they were witnessing the true bloodlust of the 10-guild alliance. These guys were yelling, "Grandpa, grandson," as they charged forward. It looked like they had lost all reason, but even though they looked crazy, their thoughts were very clear and they still cooperated with each other. There were more than 50 of them, but they weren't destroyed by the Eagle group as easily as the shopping group of 100. The members of Eagle's party were all veterans who had dominated the game for many years. They knew that they were up against a tough opponent this time. As a result, they gave up on any thoughts of instantly killing or crushing their opponent and began to seriously deal with their opponent. There were no more tricks in the chaotic battle. It was a head-on clash between the comprehensive strength of both sides. In terms of equipment, techniques, and cooperation, the Eagle group had the advantage in all aspects. On the side of the 10 Society Alliance, the most obvious advantage was the number of people, and the other was their momentum. With this kind of momentum, they all had the mentality of fighting with their lives on the line. Most of the time, they didn't care about their own life and death at all. They only hoped that this attack could hit their opponent and take away their opponent's life, paving the way for their brothers who would attack later. Under this kind of pressure, the Eagle party had no choice but to take a step back. They didn't want to die in battle, especially since they had been busy all day. Everyone had PK points on them, and if they died, they would suffer heavy losses. The Eagle party began to fight steadily, protecting the cleric first and then patiently fighting against the 10-guild alliance players. Their team was as one and didn't panic at all as they moved through the streets. On the surface, it looked like the 10-guild alliance had surrounded them, but in reality, they were constantly moving as a whole, looking for gaps in the 10-guild alliance's formation to focus their attacks. Cloud Twilight didn't think that the other side would be so patient. This was the 10-guild alliance's territory. Many people had already rushed over to help, but the other side didn't have any thoughts of ending the battle quickly. They were simply too fearless. Cloud Twilight was angry, but he couldn't do anything. In 1v1, he was forever suppressed. In a team battle, he couldn't think of a way to deal with the other side's multiplayer fighting style. Seeing that the brothers who charged forward were about to be captured and killed by the enemy, Cloud Twilight hurriedly stopped everyone from rashly attacking. Retreat and recover. We're not in a hurry. Cloud Twilight reminded everyone not to be impatient. They had time to deal with the other side. The ones in a hurry to finish the battle were the Eagle party. The people who were in the middle of fighting came to a realization and temporarily retreated. However, Eagle's party accurately grasped the moment when their opponents switched positions. Their formation suddenly spread out again, and the front line was filled with warriors. Instead of using charge, they used whirlwind slash to cover the entire street, spinning and moving forward at high speed. Mages, attack! Cloud Twilight roared. The priority of the warriors' whirlwind slash was extremely high. Only the mage's spells had a chance to deal damage to the warriors. However, the Eagle party was prepared. The cleric followed closely behind and healed the warriors. A row of spells rained down. Rays of white light rose, but the warriors didn't fall and continued to spin. Fuck, how much rage did they store up? Seeing how the other side's whirlwind slash continued for a long time, Cloud Twilight finally realized that the other side's fighting style was one after another. Previously, he had shrunk into a ball and let the 10-guild alliance hit him, but the warriors were able to hold on until they were full of rage. But now, the whirlwind slash was coming at him in a row. There was no collision between the whirlwind slashes. The control of the skill was too strong. After this row of whirlwind slashes, more than 10 of Cloud Twilight's brothers died. Seeing that the other side's whirlwind slash had stopped, Zhu Xian roared, "Brothers, it's our turn." As soon as he said this, another warrior flew out from behind the warriors. An earth-shattering slash descended from the sky. Zhu Xian quickly raised his axe to block. The loud sound was so loud that everyone's eardrums hurt. Zhu Xian cried out, "Ouch!" and flew out diagonally. It was obvious that he did not have enough strength and could not withstand this heavy blow. After the earth-shattering slash, the mage's spells also arrived. Cloud Twilight and the others had no choice but to continue to retreat. Those who couldn't retreat in time could only watch as they turned into white light and disappeared. Fuck! Cloud Twilight's eyes were bloodshot. "Charge with me. I don't believe that we can't even take down one person." He didn't care about his life anymore. With a swift step, he rushed through the sea of flames and pounced towards the earth-shattering slash guy. The others also roared and followed Cloud Twilight's instructions. They used everything they could to attack this person. This person clearly didn't expect Cloud Twilight to be willing to make such a huge sacrifice just to kill him. This was completely out of his expectations. Cloud Twilight, who rushed out of the sea of flames, was still smoking. However, it didn't affect his agility at all. He moved in a zigzag pattern and was about to flash behind the warrior. Suddenly his body tightened and his footsteps slowed down. "Fuck you, Eternal." Cloud Twilight knew that Eternal had cursed his agility again. He was so depressed that he wanted to vomit blood. With this delay, the warrior also had the time to turn around. Whirlwind Slash came out. Cloud Twilight ducked his head and dodged. He saw that all 30 of the enemy's weapons were pointed at him. Yeah. Silhouettes rushed out of the sea of flames. How could Cloud Twilight's brothers just stand there and watch? The two warriors charged forward. This time, the earth-shattering slash player couldn't dodge in time. The two warriors collided head-on and sent him flying. Fuck, how are we supposed to kill him when he's so far away? Cloud Twilight cursed. Fuck, you're only level 39 after dropping a level, and you're still so arrogant? The one who spoke was Broken Cloud. He and the others had just knocked away the guy who looked like he was about to chop Cloud Twilight's head off. Even if I drop to level 0, I'm going to take down one of them today. Cloud Twilight roared. He waved his hand at the mages and archers who normally wouldn't enter the enemy's formation. Everyone, kill them all. In close combat, archers and mages couldn't perform well because they could easily injure their own allies. Mages, in particular, had AoE spells, which were forbidden skills in chaotic battles. However, at this moment, Cloud Twilight was throwing caution to the wind. He was going to take down one of his opponents even if he had to die. When the mages and archers heard this, they didn't care anymore. They used whatever skills they had. They could hit whoever they wanted with magic and arrows. In any case, they could just throw them with their eyes closed. When Eternal saw that the other side was acting so recklessly, he knew that a few of them might actually die. He didn't think that sacrificing a few people for the other side was worth it. He hurriedly ordered his troops to retreat. Fuck, are you scared? Cowards! Cloud Twilight was furious when he saw that the other side was retreating. The players from the 10 Guilds Alliance also chased after them. In the end, Eternal firmly controlled the rhythm of the battle. He suddenly turned around and fired at the ranged players. A few more players from the 10 Guilds Alliance were killed. At the same time, the mages, priests, and archers that had always been behind Cloud Morning and the other melee classes suddenly fell into chaos. 3 assassins from the other side had stealthily sneaked into their midst. After suddenly appearing, they fiercely hacked at these fellows who were powerless in close combat. The 3 assassins had frighteningly high attack power. In just a short while, they had carved out an empty space. Cloud, Twilight, and the others hurriedly wanted to come back and help, but the three assassins had already fled far away. In the end, Eternal led his troops and charged over again. Cloud, Twilight couldn't take care of his head, nor could he take care of his head. He was so anxious that he wanted to turn the entire street upside down. At this moment, one of the brothers beside him suddenly pointed behind Eternal and the others. "Help is here!" When he pointed, Eternal and the others naturally turned around to look. They found that there were only 6 or 7 of these so-called helpers. They had arrived quite quickly. They were obviously thieves and archers. It was just a few more people. What was there to be afraid of? The helpers were actually people who had split off from Cloud, Twilight's team. They had originally been told to take a detour to prevent the thieves from escaping. They had taken the long way around, so they were naturally a bit late. Only, it was just these fellas who took a back path, so it wasn't enough to make Yun Zanmu this excited. The reason he was excited was because he saw that there was another black-robed fella who rushed over with the small squad he had sent out. At this moment, Cloud, Twilight suddenly felt much better. This change was too obvious compared to the malevolent expression on his face. Was it really worth being so happy that only a few people had come? Eternal turned around doubtfully. This time, he finally saw clearly that the group of people that had arrived weren't just thieves and archers. There was also a person in a black robe, a mage that adds agility. It's him. Eternal quickly realized. The boss had given him a hint about this person, but he didn't think that he would have the chance to meet him so soon. Just how terrifying was this guy who was rumored to be invincible in the game? Attention, tension. The mage coming from behind is very likely to be Qianli drunk. Eternal hurriedly sent a message in the channel. "I didn't expect to meet him here. Should I go and ambush him?" One of the top thieves on the leaderboard was eager to give it a try. "I heard that this guy has some sort of anti-stealth ability. Stealth is useless against him." Evidently, everyone in Eagle's team had familiarized themselves with Qianli Drunk's ambush last night. That's because those trash thieves aren't proficient enough in stealth, right? 844 expressed his disdain. "Retreat," Eternal suddenly said. What? The team was shocked. Qianli Drunk's arrival was an accident. We weren't prepared to deal with this sort of accident. "Retreat first," Eternal said. "Hey, we have 30 people. Are we afraid of him?" 8444 said. "It's not that we're afraid. We can't PK without preparation. Plus, Qianli Drunk isn't alone. Cloud, Twilight, and the others are still alive and well." Eternal said. "Those guys. One more wave and they'll be completely crippled," 844444 said. "But now that we have Qianli Drunk, the situation is different. In short, those with speed find an opportunity to escape. Everyone else, look for an opening and use a scroll." Eternal didn't argue any further and gave his orders with an unquestionable tone. The members of Eagle's team obeyed his orders. Leaving halfway through the battle wasn't something they hadn't done before. As a result, the agility-equipped players first engaged in harassment and protection, while the agility-less players fainted a few times. Then, they suddenly gathered together and used a transfer scroll. As soon as these people disappeared, the players with agility also scattered in search of a way out. In less than half a minute, the street, which had been filled with the heat of battle, suddenly fell silent. In the blink of an eye, the members of the Eagle team had all left. The last thing Cloud, Twilight, and the others saw was a figure turning a corner and disappearing into the street. Cloud, Twilight looked at his surviving brothers. Every one of them was covered in sweat. Even though it had only been a few minutes, it had been an extremely difficult battle for them. Cloud, Twilight did a quick head count. 21 of them had died. Compared to the other teams that had been wiped out so easily, his group of brothers were quite fierce. Why did they all leave? Some people were still confused, so someone pointed at the black-robed mage who was about to reach them. But when the black-robed mage arrived, everyone was speechless. Whose idea was this? Cloud, Twilight asked. "I." One of the reinforcements said. "I'm ashamed." Yun Zhongmu felt that he had no place to hide his face. Eagle's team, an elite team that had slaughtered their 50 or so players until they were at a loss, was actually scared off by a random black-robed mage who ran fast. Just how much influence did the real owner have? Cloud Twilight looked at his friend list. Qianli wasn't online at all when he was drunk. Do I still have to ask him for help? Cloud Twilight thought to himself. This direct confrontation had finally allowed him to accurately determine the strength of Eagle's team. An ordinary team of 100 players wasn't a match for the 30 of them. What should he do now? Should he change the guild's announcement and ask everyone to gather for an event? Cloud Twilight couldn't change it anymore. The more he changed, the more incompetent the guild would seem, and the more it would seem like his disdain for Eagle's team was just empty talk. Did every team find someone to dress up like this? Cloud Twilight looked at the guy who was pretending to be Qianli drunk and smiled bitterly. This kind of trick worked once, and if it worked twice or thrice, then Eagle's team was an idiot team. Old Cloud, what do we do now? Someone asked. Let's go. Cloud Twilight said. Go where? Damn it, how would I know? Cloud Twilight was annoyed. Jahuamu, that bastard. I'll call people to kill him. Someone yelled. Jahuamu was the spy who had tricked them into coming here. Of course, he had already left the guild. That's a small matter. Cloud Twilight waved his hand. Eagle's team hadn't been able to kill them all, and they had even escaped. However, no one present was in a good mood. Even someone like Yun Zhongmu, who understood the situation, could only laugh bitterly at the last trick of pretending to be drunk for 1,000 li. Only an idiot like Zhu Xian would enthusiastically discuss the feasibility of everyone pretending to be drunk for 1,000 li to scare each other to death. What they didn't know was that there were still people tailing them. Qianli drunk, huh? I want to see just how strong you are. As an agile assassin, he was naturally the last to retreat. However, he really wanted to test the depths of Qianli drunk, so after circling around, he concealed himself with stealth. At this moment, he was quite brazen as he tailed behind Cloud Twilight's team. Just based on the successful ambush of the 3 thieves from Eagle's team, he was certain that they didn't have any anti-stealth abilities. The closer he got, the more he wanted to test out the legendary anti-stealth abilities of Qianli drunk. 9 meters, right? 8 meters. 7 meters. Even in stealth, Shisan could easily keep up with the pace of the other team because he had equipment that increased his movement speed in stealth. At this moment, he was counting the distance between him and Qianli drunk. There were many different opinions on the forum about Qianli drunk's anti-stealth abilities and some bullshit killing intent. Shisan wanted to laugh just thinking about it. He didn't care what ability it was, he just wanted to figure out the distance first. As a result, all the way to the front, Shisan estimated that he could hold Qianli drunk's hand, but this guy who was said to be ineffective against stealth still didn't notice at all. Damn, I knew that the forum was full of gossip, nothing real. Shisan cursed in his heart. Looking at this guy that he could stab with his hand, he considered whether or not to make a move. No matter what, he's still a mage, his HP and defense aren't that high. I can kill him with a few quick slashes, can't I? Shisan was really bold. Not only did he sneak into the Ten Society Alliance's team, he even wanted to reveal himself to kill someone. Chapter 830. Mason was someone who dared to do what he said. As soon as he had this thought, he immediately made his move. With a dagger in hand, he took a deep breath and quickly attacked with 2 slashes and a backstab. As he expected, the opponent was instantly killed. Mason's attack was extremely high, otherwise, he wouldn't have the confidence to sneak and attack in a crowd. His attack and his escape were carried out at the same time. Mason didn't want to lose his life here. He had made up his mind that after the 2 backstab attacks, he would run even if the opponent didn't die. As such, he only saw his target turn into a white light after he escaped from Yun Zhongmu's group. Yun Zhongmu and the others didn't expect someone to be so bold as to sneak into their group and kill them. By the time they reacted, Mason had already jumped out of the crowd and laughed. "I'm Mason from Eagle Group. Is this the legendary Qianli's drunk? How disappointing." After saying this, he disappeared. No matter how arrogant he was, he knew that he wasn't capable of fighting 1 against 30. "Leader, I killed Qianli's drunk," Mason proudly announced in the channel. "Oh, Eternal was surprised. What anti-stealth? I knew it was because those people in stealth were too bad. I just casually went behind him and killed him with 1 slash. Mason said. 1 slash? Eternal asked. Alright, it was 2 slashes and a backstab. Mason said. If Qianli's drunk is that easy to deal with, then the rumors are too exaggerated. Eternal said. That's right. Who would believe those rumors on the internet? Mason was still immersed in the excitement of killing the parallel world's #1 expert. Alright, we won't be doing any large-scale operations today. Team 3 go and rest. Team 1 and 2 continue to be on duty. Split up and just hunt. Eternal ordered. The 10 people from Eagle Group's Team 3 immediately went offline. Group 3 wasn't supposed to be on duty right now, but due to Yun Zhongmu's words in the guild chat, Eternal called the members of Group 3 over. The 30 of them dealt a devastating blow to the 100-man team of the 10 Guild Alliance, using this opportunity to strike at the morale of the 10 Guild Alliance. Soon after, Cloud Twilight recruited spies in the guild to hunt them down. When Eternal found out about this, he took advantage of the situation to lure the snake out of its hole. The result was out of his expectations. The team led by Cloud Twilight was extremely tough. It would be difficult for Eternal to take them down in one go. As time dragged on, there would be more and more people from the 10 Societies Alliance. At that time, he might not even have the chance to use the teleportation scroll. Therefore, when Qianli appeared, Forever decided to retreat. As for whether that person was Qianli or not, he was also doubtful. At the time, he was more convinced because he saw the change in Yun Zhongmu's expression. It didn't seem to be an act. Eternal didn't know that Yun Zhongmu really thought that the person was Qianli's drunken. His expression was obviously genuine. When he heard that Bai Shisan killed Qianli's drunken, Eternal suspected that Qianli's drunken was a fake. There was no need to guess. Eternal had already sent people to investigate. Not long after, someone sent him a message. The newly updated experience leaderboards. Qianli's drunken is still #1. Eternal sighed. He actually hoped that Qianli's drunken was real and that he would be killed by Bai Shisan if he wasn't careful. Unfortunately, Qianli's drunken was someone else. He believed that he wouldn't be as weak as this fake. Seeing that Bai Shisan was still bragging in the chat, Eternal had to remind him, it's too early for you to be happy. On the newly updated experience leaderboards, Qianli's drunken didn't lose any levels. The person you killed wasn't Qianli's drunken. Then who was it? Bai Shisan was stunned. Anyone can put on a black robe and run a bit faster, right? Have any of you seen Qianli's drunken before? Eternal said. Of course no one had. We can't rule out the possibility that these guys will pretend to be like this in the future. Everyone be careful. Don't treat it as if it's fake. If it's fake, then it'll be troublesome. Eternal said. At this time, it wasn't just the Eagle Corps that was thinking about Gu Fei. Yun Zhongmu was also thinking about him. After the battle with the Eagle Group, everyone returned to the leveling area. Yun Zhongmu had been thinking about whether or not he should ask Gu Fei to help. He had plenty of time to think about it because Gu Fei hadn't been online for the entire day. The Eagle Group had surprisingly quietened down a lot and didn't carry out any large-scale attacks. Yun Zhongmu shamelessly said in the chat that they had a big battle with the Eagle Group outside the Thief Guild. They had fought bravely and scared off the Eagle Group. Those bastards only dared to sneak around now and everyone needed to be more careful in the future. If 100 people wasn't enough, then 200 people could do it together. Yun Zhongmu didn't have the face to seriously tell everyone, if 100 people can't deal with the Eagle Group, then 200 people. He could only say it in a joking manner. He also hoped that people would start forming a 200-man party as a joke. He even had his trusted players encourage everyone to form a 200-man party. The players wanted something new in the game. Thinking about 200 people dominating the mountains and plains was quite interesting. As a result, everyone responded to the call. Yun Zhongmu saw that they could deal with it for the time being and let out a sigh of relief. But what about Qianli's drunken? Why wasn't he online yet? Even though Yun Zhongmu hadn't decided whether or not to ask for his help, it was better to know that he was in the game. When the time came, he would have a place to call for help. Yun Zhongmu waited until nightfall, but Gu Fei was still nowhere to be seen. On this day, Yun Zhongmu was numb to receiving reports from his guild members that they had been ambushed and killed. The guild members were also numb to the guild leader's words that the opponents were just paper tigers. If they were really paper tigers, they would have been brandishing their claws and fangs for an entire day. During this time, there were people who suggested that everyone not wear their guild badges. This was a very good suggestion, but Yun Zhongmu didn't accept it. At this time, he wasn't just considering his own mentality. He was considering the personality of the players in his guild, or rather, the personality of the players in Moonlit Night City. Most players might think that taking off their guild badges and not revealing their identity was a trivial matter, but for the players of the 10 Guilds Alliance, not revealing their identity was a disgrace and a sign of weakness. The players who joined the 10 Guilds Alliance came because of their arrogance. The players of Moonlit Night City loved this kind of arrogance. Now that they were scared to the point where they didn't dare to reveal their identity, it was very difficult to accept. If they suggested this method now, it would be equivalent to lowering their head to the Eagle Group. No matter how many people were willing to do it, the reputation of the guild would fall through the floor. This would not only affect the guild internally, but also the 10 Guilds Alliance in Moonlit Night City. They would be scared off by a mercenary group of 30 to the point where they didn't even dare to wear their guild badges. The players who came to look down on them didn't care about how elite these 30 people were or what methods they used. Of course, Yun Zhongmu didn't want to be passive. He also organized people to search for the whereabouts of the Eagle Group at the revival point, but to no avail. Apart from that, Cloud Twilight also launched a few attacks offline. For example, he sent some of his friends who liked to post on the forums to Moonlit Night City's forum to raise their flags and shout their battle cries. They looked down on Eagle Group for being hired by Fancy Workshop and making things difficult for the players. But the problem was that a mercenary group was an organization that worked for other people's money. Many players in the game played this way. It didn't matter who the employer was as long as they paid. Unless it was a bitch like Silver Moon, they would definitely be looked down upon. As for Image, not every player hated it as much as Deepwater. Most players were used to this kind of service industry in the game, so they didn't have much of a conflict. As such, they didn't understand why Image hired the Eagle Group to deal with the 10 Guilds Alliance. On the other hand, most players in Moonlit Night City knew that the 10 Guilds Alliance had started to suppress Image for no reason and even started a war in the city. Not only did the 10 Guilds Alliance not get any support, but they also got themselves into trouble. Moreover, someone pointed out that the 10 Guilds Alliance couldn't beat the Eagle Group, so they came to the forums to ask for support. This made Yun Zhongmu extremely angry. He hated that he didn't have the right to delete the post on the forums. He could only scold the bastards who posted it for not having the ability to influence the public opinion. His subordinate also felt wronged. Wasn't it just a post? Who knew there would be so many deep thoughts? We're not professionals, so how would we know? It would have been fine if this offline attack was just a joke, but the result was that the 10 Societies Alliance quickly received countless posts denouncing them. From the analysis of why the 10 Societies Alliance bullied the well-behaved Ingenious Studios, to the series of tyrannical actions that the 10 Societies Alliance had developed to this day, and even to the primitive era when everyone was 30 years old, they wrote that Yun Zhongmu and his group were like beggars begging on the streets. In comparison, they had become nouveau riche, and they were showing off just because they had a bit of power. It was obvious that these posts were written by professionals. Yun Zhongmu was furious when he heard about it, and said that he wanted to go offline and fight with people on the forums. Everyone in the guild was afraid. None of them were afraid of PK, but they were fine with going to the forums to pick a fight with people and scolding them with, "Fuck your grandpa." However, they were not good at arguing over words and arguing for what was right. That was not their forte. In the end, Yun Zhongmu refused and wanted to fight with the other side. Many of his old friends couldn't stop him, and in the end, Yun Zhongmu gathered hundreds of people to go offline and attack the forums. Yun Zhongmu let out a long sigh. At least these hundreds of people won't be ambushed by the Eagle Group. He switched to the forums. The hundreds of people were quite impactful, but very quickly, Half of them were reported and banned for using vulgar words. They looked at the screen and wanted to smash their computers. Boss, I've been banned. Boss, I've been banned too. I've been banned, I'm going back to the game, boss. What do we do now, boss? What do we do? I've been banned too. Yun Zhongmu was furious. Everything was going his way. He was silenced even when he posted on the forums. He couldn't use the godly skill of damn it, and it was about to burst his Ren and Du meridians. There was nothing that could hide from Brother Yu on the forums. The parallel world was huge and the forums were huge too. There were more than 100 sections in the main city section, and it was impossible to browse through them. However, Brother Yu was a professional spammer, and he had a keen sense of the forums. He could always find the hottest topics at the first moment, and soon he came into contact with the war of words in Moonlit Night City. Brother Yu was stunned. The dispute with Ing Chi started because of them, but now that everything in Cloud City was over, why was it getting worse in Moonlit Night City? Judging from the public opinion on the forums, the 10 Clubs Alliance was in a bad situation. He had heard of this Eagle group before. It was a force from a distant main city. They actually came to Moonlit Night City to challenge the 10 Clubs Alliance, which had the most number of people in the game. Brother Yu was itchy and he had the urge to write a post. Fortunately, he didn't forget that the 10 Clubs Alliance was an old friend of theirs. After looking through a few posts with Big Brother Yu's experience, he could tell at a glance that these dual posts were intentional, especially those that attacked the 10 Guilds Alliance. It was obvious that these dual posts were written by professional gunners. Since the opponent was a workshop, it was easy for ordinary players to spend money to motivate these players. In Brother Yu's impression, Yun Zhongmu was just an ordinary player, and he didn't look like a rich playboy. Let's go back to the game first. Brother Yu suppressed his desire to continue enjoying the gossip and entered the game. Immediately, he received a lot of system notifications telling him to pick up his mail. This was one of the reasons why Brother Yu didn't want to enter the game. Guild recruitment, selection, interviews, there were many and complicated things to do, and now everyone was as busy as a dog. Brother Yu went online to pick up the mail, and after handing it to someone he quickly went offline and disappeared. There was a limit to a person's enthusiasm for work, and it was easy to be overwhelmed by the excessive workload. Something big happened. Brother Yu shouted as soon as he came up. What's bigger than looking at 500 resumes? Unscathed in battle was dumbfounded. Of course, the job of selecting people was handed over to these experts. Only experts had foresight. At this moment, he and Yu Tianxinming each held 500 resumes, and it was said that there would be more later on. It was unbearable. Shui Mizu and Lu Ku were all pulled in as temporary workers. Yun Zhongmu and the others are still fighting with Ing Chi. Brother Yu said, "Oh, there's still people in Ing Chi?" Han Family Young Master was quite surprised. Today, when Nitrite contacted him, he was half happy and half worried, and told him that the headhunting was going very smoothly. Ing Chi's first-line director and second-line city manager were all swept away, and all of them were under Yun Teng's command. Suddenly, there were more than 100 people, and they were assigned to positions. Nitrite had been working until now and hadn't slept yet. Very good. You have perfectly fulfilled our agreement. This was how the young master of the Han family replied. Nitrite smiled bitterly. The agreement was fulfilled, and it was extremely successful. For Yun Teng, the challenge had just begun. If he couldn't use the efficiency method to digest all of these people and get them on the right track, Yun Teng would very likely be directly suppressed. Bai Shi still hasn't come out? Nitrite had dealt with Bai Shi Jingluan many times, so he could be considered familiar with him. If he hasn't gone offline since he went to jail, he'll probably be out in the wee hours of this morning. Han Family Young Master said. Then has he gone offline yet? I heard that he hasn't gone online since last night. Han Family Young Master said. I'll go call him. Nitrite directly went offline. The result of going offline was that Bai Shi Jingluan had no choice but to go back online and go to jail. He didn't have the life of a young master like Gu Fei, and he still had to rely on this to support his family. From Nitrite's anxious state of mind, Han Family Young Master knew that their headhunting this time had put a lot of pressure on them, and it seemed like it was extremely successful. Now that he heard Brother Yu say that In Chi was still fighting, he was naturally a bit surprised. Yes, they invited the Eagle Group. Brother Yu said, Eagle Group? What's that? Han family young master had never heard of it. Hee, it's not surprising that you guys don't know because this is in a city far, far away in a parallel world. Brother Yu began to show off, but then someone suddenly interrupted him. I know. To have this kind of experience, naturally, it had to be Drifting, who had been to countless main cities, and had been judged as a vagabond by the system. Which one of you said? Han family young master asked. Brother Yu of course was very enthusiastic. This was the moment where he had the most sense of existence. As soon as he went online, he had already found his notebook and flipped to the content related to the Eagle Group. The Eagle Group belongs to the Grassy City in the southeast region, but their usual activity isn't limited to Grassy City. There have been traces of the Eagle Group in about 16 main cities in the southeast region. There are 30 members in the group, and all of them are experts in the top 20 of the experience leaderboard. Oh, after the city war, the experience leaderboard was reshuffled, and I haven't updated the information I have, so this might not be accurate. Brother Yu interrupted halfway. Brother Yu, are you tired of sending messages? Come here and tell me directly. Han family young master was probably tired of reading messages all the time, and hoped that someone would directly speak into his ear. Honest Brother Yu immediately hugged his notebook and ran to the interview area where Han family young master and the others were at. When they saw that all the experts were there, everyone knew that Yun Zhongmu had helped them before, so they naturally had to return the favor. They were afraid that they would have to fight with this Eagle Group. Yun Zhongmu and the others don't seem to be in a good situation. Brother Yu also felt everyone's thoughts and hurriedly said, Continue talking about that whatever group. Han family young master said, Oh, there are 30 members and they are all experts. True experts, I mean experts that don't lose to anyone here. Brother Yu said seriously. In the end, unscathed in battle and Yu Tianxinming, who bore the brunt of it, snorted disdainfully. Drifting nodded his head at the side. Brother Yu is right, they really are all very high-level experts. How high? As high as you? Isn't that trash? Yu Tianxinming sneered. Drifting smiled and didn't look back at Yu Tianxinming. He began to talk about what he knew. I've been in Eagle Group, so I know their level very well. They don't lose to anyone here. So then you know more. Tell me. When Brother Yu heard that the person next to him was someone he had fought personally, he immediately felt like he had lost his cool, so he hurriedly gave way. You should tell me. That was a long time ago, and the group leader was still soaring Eagle. I heard that the group leader changed after that, Drifting said. That's right. The current group leader of Eagle Group is the #1 on the Knight leaderboard. He's also a Dark Knight, Eternity. Brother Yu couldn't help but get excited when he heard that there was an expert of the same profession, especially one from the same branch as him. Who are you talking about? Han family young master, who didn't know if he heard it or not, suddenly became spirited. Chapter 8:31. The Han family young master wasn't the only one who reacted. Water Depth and Lu Ku were both hugging a stack of resumes and hiding in a corner. When they heard this name, the two of them raised their heads and looked at each other. Everlasting, #1 on the Knight leaderboards, Everlasting. Brother Yu repeated, but he quickly realized that being #1 on the level leaderboards wouldn't shock anyone in the room, especially the Han family young master. Even Qianli would look down on him when he was drunk. What was the point of being #1 on the Knight leaderboards? There had to be another reason for this person's sudden shock. You know each other? Drifting looked at the Han family young master in confusion. The Han family young master hesitated for a moment, which was very rare. He looked back and saw that Water Depth and Lu Ku had walked over from the corner. Friends who were slightly familiar with each other knew that Sword Demon, Han family young master, Water Depth, and Lu Ku were old friends in the game. Seeing the three's reactions, it wasn't hard to imagine that Everlasting was an old friend of theirs. It wasn't strange for old players like them to know each other. It was just that the parallel world randomly sent everyone to the main cities, so it wasn't convenient for them to come and go if they were too far away. But if they were old friends, then they should be able to add each other as friends, right? Is it him? Water Depth walked over and said, "Not necessarily. Everlasting's name is very common. It's easy to get someone else to add him." Lucas said, "Old rival?" Drifting made a logical deduction. They knew each other and seemed to care about each other, but they hadn't added each other as friends. It was very likely that they were old rivals. Rival? I've always wanted to have this opportunity. The Han family's young master suddenly said, "If it's him, then this is really a coincidence." Water Depth said, "When will Sword Demon come out?" Lu Ku suddenly asked. "If he doesn't sleep, then he'll be out at around 2 or 3 in the afternoon tomorrow." The Han family young master said, "Does this guy have an offline account?" "I don't know. He's always here when I'm here." All of the Sword Demon's friends who were present expressed this one after another. They seriously suspected that the Sword Demon had never gone offline since he entered prison. With Sword Demon's tenacity, everyone believed that he could do it. "Then, should we go and settle this matter before this guy comes out?" Shui Shen asked the Han family young master. The two of them conversed amiably, which was rare for them. "We can't be sure that this is always that guy," Han family young master said. "His name is Eternal, and he's able to climb to the top of the leaderboard. It's because this guy has a high chance of climbing. You noticed him a long time ago, didn't you?" said Deepwater. "Sorry, I never look at the ranking list," Han family young master said. The others were confused and finally couldn't help but crowd around them. Yutian Shenming hurriedly interrupted, "What are you guys talking about? Speak clearly. What does forever have to do with you?" "We have all kinds of relationships," Deepwater said, "from never knowing him, to being a friend, to being an extraordinary friend, and then to being an enemy." Enemy. Everyone showed an expression as if they had expected this. Although everyone was a celebrity in the online gaming world, the previous online games were split into different servers. Experts could only discuss common topics like strategies and techniques on the forums. As for the grudges between people, players from different servers basically didn't have anything in common and wouldn't pay much attention to the grudges and gossip of other servers. Therefore, the normal players did not know what kind of story Sword Ghost and the others had in the past. Therefore, everyone turned to look at Brother Yu, who was unconventional in this aspect. "There are people involved. Why are you still looking at me?" Brother Yu wasn't in a good mood. "It's time to test your abilities," Unscathed in Battle said. "Brother Yu really did know a bit. Is it something that happened in Battle of the Heavens?" Battle of the Heavens. Yutian Shenming was also excited. Battle of the Heavens was also an online game that he had played in. He couldn't wait to ask, "Which server are you guys in?" Then he stared at Drifting. "I didn't ask you." Drifting smiled but didn't say anything. The others also stared at Yutian Shenming expressionlessly. Yutian Shenming lowered his head. "Yes, it's something that happened in that game." Han family young master nodded. "Oh, that thing is..." Brother Yu's brain wasn't a hard drive, so he couldn't read the information easily. Although he had some impression of it, he couldn't tell the specifics of the gossip. He touched his pocket and immediately remembered that the information he compiled was all offline. He didn't need it in the parallel world, so he naturally wouldn't copy it into the game. He couldn't gossip for a while, which was very painful. Everyone obviously wanted to hear the gossip. In fact, they were afraid that the person involved wouldn't want to talk about it, so they looked to Brother Yu. Seeing Brother Yu's expression, they were instantly disappointed. Brother Yu gritted his teeth. "Wait, I'll go take a look." "With us here, what's there to look for?" Lu Ku was helpless. The so-called experts. The key was that they were persistent enough. "What is it?" Everyone was in high spirits. Lu Ku glanced at the other two and said, "Everyone knows that the three of us and Sword Demon are old gaming partners. We've always played together." He had met this player called Eternal in Records of the Heavens. You should all remember this game. It's a game that places a lot of emphasis on teamwork. The standard team size is 5 people and there were 4 of us. I was a swordsman, Deepwater was a magician, Sword Demon was a marksman, and Han Family Young Master was an angel. With this lineup, you're missing a conjurer. Brother, you couldn't help but interrupt. Liu Ke nodded. That's right, our team was missing a conjurer, but we had already formed a gang. Usually, we would have a random person from the gang to team up with us. That was until we met Forever, and then he joined us. His skills and awareness were very good, so the 5 of us became a fixed team and our relationship got better and better. This person was very amiable and interesting. Everyone in the gang liked him very much. But later, this fellow began to be at odds with the Sword Ghost, whether intentionally or unintentionally. Intentionally or unintentionally, he did it on purpose. That's why he came. Deepwater interrupted. Liu Ke sighed. Sword Demon is a kind person. As long as what he said was reasonable, we would usually give in to him. But this guy was getting more and more insatiable. We couldn't stand it and would sometimes argue with him. Then there were more and more arguments, and many of the players in the gang also had disagreements. During the Azure Sky route battle, it was clearly him who made 2 consecutive mistakes during the crucial moments of the battle, causing us to lose and get eliminated. In the end, he made a false accusation and complained that it was the Sword Ghost's double box flash that destroyed his seal. But at that time, it was clearly his control that was a step too slow, and the opponent's magician actually activated Hexapod. Sword Demon had no choice but to use double box flash. Of course, it would destroy his curse as well. At this time, he didn't add a Hexapod curse. Is there any doubt about the result? It had been a long time, but Liu Ke still remembered the details so clearly. It was obvious how deep the impression was. Everyone present was a master, and they understood the twists and turns of the story. Basically, he always made mistakes, and Sword Demon helped him fix it, and then he made mistakes again. In the end, he still blamed Sword Demon. It was indeed quite outrageous. But Unscathed in Battle couldn't help but say, if the magician snatched the Hexapod, the swordsman could immediately use Falling Flower Slash and Feast of V to break the Hexapod. It would be more effective than Gunner's double box flash. Liu Ke was a little embarrassed. Han Family Young Master continued Unscathed in Battle's words, because Liu Ke's skills aren't good enough, it's too difficult. Unscathed in Battle couldn't help but feel proud. That's true. Falling Flower Slash and Feast of V to accurately break the Hexapod. It's not something an ordinary swordsman can do. But the problem is, there weren't many swordsmen who could do this at that time, right? Most teams will choose to use double flash box, Cursemancer, and hexagram curse, Drifting said. That's why I said that this guy was just looking for a chance to show off. Don't pay attention to him. Yutian Shenming looked down on Unscathed in Battle, but he didn't forget to show off in the end. But to be honest, there's a trick to casting a Hexapod. Falling Flower Slash and Feast of V are not invincible. As long as you cast Ice Reflect the moment you cast the Hexapod, the appearance of the Hexapod will be slightly delayed. Then, Falling Flower Slash and Feast of V will be cast too early. Drifting opened his mouth and snatched away the words that Imperial Divine Ming was about to show off, which made Imperial Divine Ming very angry. However, Water Depth, who was also a magician at the time, was very surprised and said, casting an Ice Reflect while in the Six-Will realm, how fast do you have to be to do that? Yutian Shenming looked askance at him. That's why some people only know in theory. I doubt that they can actually use it. Drifting smiled. The truth is that there are no more than 4 people in the entire server who can use Falling Flower Slash and Feast of V to break through the Hexapod. So even if you use Hexapod and Ice Reflect, there's a 99% chance that you'll be turned into a hornet's nest by a noob's double box flash. A bunch of experts had twisted the story of a grudge into a show-off, but Brother Yu was still listening with relish. Of course, he had played this game before, but he didn't know that there were such gorgeous techniques. Obviously, these were show-off techniques that only existed among high-end players. Although it was something that was already in the coffin, it still reflected the realm of this group of people. Hey, do you want me to continue? Liu Ke was very unhappy. It was just a point of victory in a battle, but she, the swordsman, and Water Depth, the magician, were both looked down upon by the masters here. These guys were really sick. I don't think there's any need to continue, Drifting said. It's obvious that Forever is at fault. If he said that you couldn't use Falling Flower Slash to break through the hexapod, then he's being unreasonable. If he said that you couldn't use Falling Flower Slash and Feast of V to break through the hexapod, then that's even more unreasonable. Also, his mistake was obviously intentional. If he's really at the same level as us, it's already ridiculous for him to make this kind of mistake once, let alone twice. He wasn't in front of the computer at the time, right? Yes, it was definitely intentional. The masters made a technical judgment. However, there's more than one way to make this kind of coordination, so it's hard to come to a conclusion. According to the way you guys played, he was wrong here, but he still had a lot of excuses. In short, he could easily create a dispute. That's probably why he made this mistake on purpose, Drifting said. Luca nodded. Anyway, even Sword Demon couldn't help it this time. After the dispute, he always pretended to be the weak one and said that the four of us were against him. Luca held back her vulgarities, but she wasn't in the mood to continue. Then he left and took half of the players in the gang with him. We were originally the strongest gang in the server, but now we're at the bottom. Speaking of this, I have to mention a certain someone's contribution. If it wasn't for a certain someone being so annoying and intolerable, I think Forever would have at most taken a third, no, a quarter of the people, Shueishin said. Everyone looked at the Han family young master. The Han family young master nodded indifferently. This self-reflection is quite profound. Shameless. Shueishin gritted his teeth. Forever is indeed quite shameless. The Han family young master nodded again. I'm talking about you. Shueishin said. The Han family young master was indifferent and looked at the others. It's just like this. We've formed a grudge with Forever. Only Sword Demon treated this as a normal dispute, but we all think that Forever was purposefully trying to sow discord in our gang from the start. I remember that a certain someone almost got together with him at that time, right? Shueishin felt awkward and quickly explained to the others. I just wanted to stay away from some annoying things. Lu Ku was gratified. Luckily, the four of us weren't provoked by him. Because we don't need it at all. The Han family young master said. Right, I already hate a certain someone to the extreme. How else can I sow discord? Shueishin said. The others face-bombed. Shueishin continuously expressed his strong dislike towards the Han family young master, while the Han family young master repeatedly expressed his disregard for Shueishin. But up until now, these two seem to be the ones who talked the most. Brother, you did a rough calculation. Even the Yutian Shinming and Scathed in Battle Group and Yutian Shinming Drifting Group, who often argued with each other, couldn't compete with this group. Then what's his goal in trying to sow discord? Drifting asked. If it's the biggest guild in the server, you've pretty much taken over Azure Mountain, right? Azure Sword, who had been listening from the side and hadn't said anything, suddenly spoke. Of course. Shueishin replied. Azure Sword clearly had painful memories in the game. At this moment, he couldn't bear to think back. If you can't take over Azure Mountain, you basically can't earn money in Records of the Heavens. And this game is really unbalanced. Flaming Shirt also complained. That's part of the charm. Back then, the fun PvP was all because of Azure Mountain. Unscathed in Battle said. Without a strong guild, you won't be able to survive in Azure Mountain. Azure Sword sighed. How long have you controlled Azure Mountain for? Drifting asked. Shueishin and Lu Ku looked at each other with pride on their faces. 3 months. 3 months. All of the experts were shocked. In Records of the Heavens, a guild that could take over Azure Mountain for a week was already amazing. Heavenly Cloud Pavilion. You're a guild in 3 servers, right? Brother Yu was indeed the king of Intel. Although the others immediately remembered that there was a huge bull guild that took over Azure Mountain for 3 months in Records of the Heavens, they couldn't remember the name, let alone which server they were from. Heavenly Cloud Pavilion. Right, isn't it just Sword Demon? No, he was called Smoker. I remember now, ha. Brother Yu was excited. If it wasn't for this guy, it would have been more than 3 months. Deepwater said, After this guy took away our people, he immediately joined another guild that was considered strong. On the same day, he took over our territory in Azure Mountain. Damn, who would believe that this wasn't premeditated? What happened after that? Azure Sword asked. After that, we fought back a few times, but we lost more than we won. Although they weren't as strong as us, they occupied most of the time. We thought about finding trouble with Eternal, but Sword Demon didn't agree. He said that it was normal for friends to part on good terms and that it was normal for us to fight. There wasn't anything wrong. Sword Demon? He was so kind that I wanted to strangle him to death. Although Shueishin said that when he mentioned Sword Demon, his expression of admiration was still revealed. Then this time, we had a good reason to fight, and the punishment for dying in the parallel world was huge. Isn't that great? Drifting smiled. Humph, I suspected that he was brought in by the studio. At that time, we occupied Azure Mountain and squatted at our studio. We couldn't make a lot of money. Now, he's hired by Ingqi. Is this guy born to be the studio's dog? Shueishin looked at him with disdain. Hey, even if he's working for the studio, you don't have to be so ugly, right? Azure Sword and the other guys who were about to start working with the studio expressed their dissatisfaction. Of course I'm not talking about you guys. You guys are self-reliant and self-reliant. You guys are working for the studio. You guys are heroes, Shueishin said. The others smiled bitterly. Brother, you looked at the Han family young master. What do we do now? The Han family young master looked at Drifting. What do you think of the Eagle Group's strength? If they are compared to us, their number of experts and teamwork are above us. Drifting was honest. There were 30 people in the Eagle Group. If they were all in the top 20 of the experience ranking, then they would have more experts than the current Very Awesome Group. As for their teamwork, it was very good. The teamwork of the experts on their side was completely based on their outstanding awareness. But now, their opponents were experts of the same level, but their teamwork was built from fighting together for a long time. There was definitely a difference. We have Qianli, Yutian Shenming said. If we include Qianli, I don't know if I should multiply our strength by 2 or 1. That guy's strength is unfathomable. Drifting said. But Qianli isn't online, Sword Demon is still in prison, and Baisher. Brother, you counted and realized that the 3 most powerful people on their side weren't here. If Baisher and the others come out, they must have something to do, right? The Han family young master said and glanced at Azure Sword and the others. Yunting Studio must be waiting for Baisher to come out of prison to make them do hard labor. These professional players whose main goal was to make money probably wouldn't participate in the battle against the Eagle Group. Chapter 8:32. Jianan Yu understood what Han family young master meant. He scratched his head and said, I'm not sure what the arrangement will be. Without Baisher and without Danan and the other 6, with Brother Yu counted the number of people. Apart from a few trash, they're all the original members of our elite group, Yutian Shenming said. Indeed, it was very heaven-defying. There were only 6 elite members, Jianan Yu's 7, and Drifting. 100 Realm Strategist was actually considered an external helper. He had never joined their guild before. Drifting's 2 companions, who wrote love on their left and handsome on their right, were slightly worse. Yun Xiang was even worse. There was no need to mention Fireball. If Jianan Yu's 7 and Baisher Jingluan were busy, then only the elite group and Drifting were left. There's a lot of pressure. Drifting concluded. If it wasn't for your shamelessness, we might have been a bit stronger. Imperial Sky Divine Ming said. You're so noisy. Unscathed in battle tossed Yutian Shenming into the corner. There's still the 2 of us. How can we not participate in fighting against that guy? Lu Ku and Water asked. According to the records in Records of Battle of the Ether, you 2 are still a bit away from being first class. Han family young master said. Lu Ku was helpless. Unscathed in battle interrupted. If that's the case, then Brother Yu doesn't count either. Brother Yu burst into tears. Drifting smiled and said, It's not that exaggerated. The 30 of them aren't all top class. There's a difference between them. Plus, the parallel world is a new game. Their previous skills don't count. They felt relieved, but then Drifting added, "But Brother Yu continued to cry. Let's go to Moonlit Night City first." Han family young master stood up. "Aren't we going to wait for Qianli?" Yutian Shenming came back from the corner. He felt sorry for the audience if he didn't bring a nuclear weapon. Who knows when that guy will come? Han family young master said, "Do you want me to call him?" Brother Yu was in high spirits because he had Gu Fei's contact number. "Let's go to Moonlit Night City and take a look," Han family young master said. Therefore the experts all set off. Jian Nanyo's group of 7 had not come out yet. The 6 of them had nothing to do, so they decided to travel together. The guild's matters were all handed over to Yun Xiang. Yun Xiang looked at the pile of players' resumes and listened to Brother Yu telling the guild to forward all the resumes to him. Tears streamed down his face. The experts didn't even walk when they went out. After handing over the guild's work in Cloud City, they gathered together and used teleportation scrolls. Now that they have a close relationship with Yunting Studio, all the teleportation scrolls are picked up from their home. Of course, Yunting can't raise the price in the face of such a big customer. In reality, teleportation scrolls weren't very popular. They were expensive, one-time use items, and only used to save time. Only the rich would use them. It was just like how a poor butterfly would take a bus when it was near, and a train when it was far away. They would never take a taxi or plane just to save time. When they arrived at Moonlit Night City, they naturally contacted Yun Zhongmu first. Yun Zhongmu started a war on the forums. His first post was muted and he returned to the game with a belly full of anger. In the end, the experts of Cloud City took the initiative to contact him. Yun Zhongmu was overjoyed. With such a big guild, he was too embarrassed to ask for help. However, since they took the initiative to help, Yun Zhongmu hurriedly accepted after a few polite words. Yun Zhongmu actually felt that his face was more important than his life. However, he was the leader of the guild, so he had to consider the big picture. At a crucial moment like this, his face was fine. The place where the two sides agreed to meet was naturally the Gathering Place Tavern. The experts of Cloud City arrived first. When Yun Zhongmu arrived, he was surrounded by hundreds of people. The experts of Cloud City were all at a loss. In their impression, although Yun Zhongmu was arrogant, he wasn't someone who liked to put on airs. That was something that only Sword Without Oath liked to do. Yun Zhongmu saw everyone's surprise and felt very awkward. After telling his brothers to sit wherever they wanted, he, Duan Yun, and the other core brothers sat together with the experts of Cloud City. There were many experts in Cloud City. One table couldn't fit everyone, so they sat at 2 tables, forming a circle. Although Yun Zhongmu's situation wasn't good, he still maintained his composure. As soon as he sat down, he took out a wine glass and raised it to the experts. "Our 10 Guilds Alliance has lost a bit this time. I won't say any more polite words. Thank you in advance." Everyone hurriedly raised their glasses. Most of the time, it was Brother Yu who did the talking. He was also quite familiar with the way he spoke. "In the end, this started because of us. How could we not come over and give you an explanation? Old Yun, you're too polite." It wasn't the first time that everyone had interacted with Yun Zhongmu and the others. They didn't call him guild leader or anything like that. Instead, they directly called him Old Yun to make it seem like they were close. Brother Yu's treatment of people was much better than his gaming skills. When Yun Zhongmu saw that the other side didn't treat him as an outsider, he naturally didn't put on airs anymore. His depressed expression was also revealed. "Let's get to the point. What's the exact situation?" Han family young master asked. "The other side is very strong," Yun Zhongmu said. "Especially when it comes to teamwork. Our guild's 50 or so brothers aren't weak either. We fought against 30 of them head-on, but 21 of us died. We didn't even manage to kill a single one of our opponents." The experts of Cloud City fell silent. They knew how strong Yun Zhongmu and the others were. They couldn't even kill a single one of their opponents in a head-on battle. This Eagle group was a bit too strong. "This is the information we've gathered on the Eagle group for a day." Yun Zhongmu flipped through a few pieces of paper and handed them to Han family young master. At the same time he asked, Where's Boss Sword Demon? He's in prison. Han family young master took the information and replied without raising his head. The other experts all gathered around to look at the information. Yun Zhongmu and the others had already gathered the names of the 30 experts of the Eagle Group on the forums. The information on their equipment was scattered everywhere. It was possible to roughly estimate a person's level based on their equipment, but they couldn't be too accurate. Firstly, their equipment wasn't complete. Secondly, experts wouldn't only have a few pieces of equipment on them. Usually, they would have a whole bunch of equipment to use. It was unknown how they would use their equipment in a real battle. Relying too much on the information on their equipment would definitely be disadvantageous. Even so, the pile of equipment information still caused the experts of Cloud City to sigh in surprise. They compared their own equipment and sighed from time to time. After flipping through a few pages, the experts looked at each other and came to a conclusion. Based on the standard of their equipment, they're definitely not inferior to us. Yun Zhongmu nodded as he expressed his opinion. Looking at these equipment, I think that if this was the normal way of playing the game, they'd all put together such strong equipment. This group of people's luck is a bit too good. Such a comprehensive set of equipment must have gone through a certain trading channel. Considering that there's still more equipment that hasn't been revealed here, I think the total value of these equipment can't be achieved without the support of a certain amount of RMB. You're right. Han family young master nodded. Moreover, the equipment in the parallel world sometimes has some regional characteristics. Brother Yu scanned through some of the famous equipment and said, based on their location in the southeast region, some of these equipment shouldn't have been traded normally. Unless it's through a workshop, and it has to be a relatively large workshop that has a business network throughout the entire game. Brother Yu, isn't that obvious? Didn't you already know that they're from Eagle Workshop? That thing? This time, Water Depth didn't use Eagle Hound, or Lackey, to stab South Sword and the others. At first, they said they were hired. Looking at these equipment, it seems like the Eagle Party has a close relationship with the workshop. It's very likely that their strength is supported by the workshop. Brother, you said. The experts all agreed with this. Everyone in the elite group was armed to the teeth, but they couldn't help but mention the extraordinary existence of Gu Fei. The generous rewards they received in the game, as well as the large amount of gold they earned, were all closely related to Gu Fei. Without Gu Fei, it was hard to say if they could have made it to the end of the mercenary group competition. None of them would use cash to enter the game. If it weren't for Gu Fei's multiple participation rewards and gold coins, it was hard to say whether they would have such luxurious equipment up to this point on their own. As for the 30 people in the Eagle Party, it didn't make sense that they didn't have a strong backer. As for South Sword and the others, they almost drooled when they saw the equipment of the Eagle Party. Their own equipment was worse than these people's. More importantly, they thought about the equipment of these people. Any one of them would be able to improve their lives. With this kind of equipment, do you think you can win one-on-one? Han family young master asked. That depends on the class. South Sword was always objective. If it's the same class, Han family young master said, there was nothing more fair than a PK between the same class. I think I'll be fine. Drifting smiled confidently. Humph, it's not a problem. Unscathed in battle said. I don't dare to be so sure, but I think I have a high chance of winning. The experts were obviously quite confident in their own skills. Yutian Shenming adjusted the 3 bows on his shoulder and said seriously, you can't just consider personal factors. Sometimes, you have to consider external factors, such as the terrain. Ha! Drifting laughed. Why are you laughing? Yutian Shenming was angry. What about the others? Han family young master looked at the other experts. Apart from the cleric, Blackwater, Glue, and the others were all silent. Left hand Love, right hand Handsome, hesitated. Brother Yu even lowered his head. The other party's equipment was indeed beautiful and oppressive. It's always like this in a 1v1. In a team, they have the bonus of teamwork. Although we have my talent and skills, the other party has more people than us. It seems like our chances of winning are slim. Han family young master said. Everyone was silent. Yun Zhongmu frowned. After hesitating for a long time, he finally asked, "Where's Qianli?" Of course, he knew that Qianli wasn't online. He only asked this because he wanted to know if Qianli would join the battle. "He's not online." The answer was the same as he expected. "That guy is an unknown number. Let's not count him yet," Han family young master said. He then asked Yun Zhongmu, "What's their current state?" "Currently, they seem to be scattered. They're wandering around. When they find someone from our guild that's alone, they immediately kill them," Yun Zhongmu said. "Then did you guys organize a team to search?" Han family young master was confused. "We did. They're often active in the area around the revival point. We've searched everywhere, but we can't find them," Yun Zhongmu said regretfully. "You guys know them?" Han family young master said. "We've had direct contact. Some of my brothers can recognize some of them," Yun Zhongmu said. He had a deep impression of the other party's leader. Of course, there was also that arrogant 8x3. "So you're saying that when they attack you guys, they never cover their faces?" Han family young master said. Right now, covering one's face had become a trend. Those who went out to kill people and didn't want revenge would cover their faces. Only people like Gu Fei would purposely let others see their faces and hope for revenge. Now, people didn't even want to look at his face. When they saw Purple's sword, they would want to avoid him. I'm curious that they never cover their faces. There's no camera function in the game. Even if we could search for their information on the forums, we wouldn't be able to find their faces. So, if they covered their faces, it would be very advantageous. Yun Zhongmu said. They're demonstrating to you guys that they're not afraid of revenge. They're very arrogant, Han family young master said. Yun Zhongmu thought the same. Seeing that the others agreed, he clenched his teeth. But they haven't seen them even once. That's not necessary, right? Because they have a safe hiding place. Han family young master laughed coldly. What? Isn't it near the revival point? There would be a lot of people around any revival point and it would be very lively. So, did Ing Chi's studio have a lot of shops around these places? Plus, you guys are afraid of their strength, so you'll search in groups. That way, most of the time, they'll find you first and not the other way around. They'll think of a way to avoid you, and if they can't avoid you, they'll immediately find a place to hide. I'm sure that Ing Chi has given them access to all of Moonlit Night City's properties. Han family young master said. Hearing this, everyone understood. Yun Zhongmu knocked his head and roared, immediately gather people and block all of Ing Chi's shops. Actually, there were people from the 10 Societies Alliance watching over Ing Chi's shops, but at that time, they wanted to kill people and cause trouble. However, after the Eagle Group retaliated, some of these people were killed. Those who weren't killed responded to the call to gather, so naturally, there weren't any more people watching over them. It's no use. You don't have to go out if you want to. You can just use the teleportation scroll. Han family young master said. Guard the shops, then form teams to search for them. Yun Zhongmu said. How many shops does Ing Chi have? How many people do you have guarding each shop? If you have too many, do you still have people to search everywhere? If you don't have enough, what if they gather and eat you up? Han family young master said. We can still do this if we deploy our forces. Jian Nanyu was indeed an expert at killing and stealing. Han family young master nodded his head. It was clear that he had an idea. Yun Zhongmu wasn't stupid, and after thinking for a bit, he said, should we gather our forces and clear them area by area? That's right. Since their people are scattered around the revival points, then it's impossible to gather 30 people at any one revival point. Thus, our team doesn't need too many people. Choose an area and lock down the streets. After the search team enters, we'll first guard all of Ing Chi's shops and then begin the search. Han family young master said. This method isn't bad. Yun Zhongmu frowned, but we can't let them know about this beforehand. However, we've clearly already had people in our guild who have been bribed by them. If we do this with so many people, there's no way we won't let them know. Our previous search team members were all reliable people. Han family young master had a look of disdain on his face. There's no need to tell them the real plan. We can just find someone we can trust to be the team leader and form a team. We can just find an excuse like a quest or something. Yun Jongmu's eyes lit up when he heard this, and he slapped his forehead. That's right. Calculate the time and enter the area at the same time. Even if they realize, it'll be too late. Han family young master said. Great plan, great plan. Yun Jongmu laughed out loud and immediately said to Duan Yun, hurry up and set it up. Everything began to be carried out according to Han family young master's plan. Yun Jongmu first personally brought people to search the various areas. However, his real goal was to gather the locations of Ingqi's shops in each area. Who would be the team leader for each shop was also assigned. Afterwards, they immediately started to gather people and form teams. There were all sorts of excuses and quests. The 10 Guild Alliance's style of doing things was quite straightforward, and the teams were quickly organized. However, Yun Jongmu was a little worried about the number of people. If there was a spy in one of the teams who leaked the information and allowed the Eagle Group to ambush them, then it would be troublesome. However, Yun Jongmu wasn't someone who couldn't take risks. If they were ambushed, then they would be ambushed. If they were ambushed, then they would be ambushed. If they were ambushed, then they would be ambushed. Yun Jongmu didn't believe that thousands of people couldn't take down 30 people. In the end, this situation didn't happen, and the team successfully entered the main city. The players in the teams all thought that they were helping their team leaders do something. Some said it was a guild quest, some said it was a private job. No matter how big or small it was, there was a reason for so many people to be called out. The Eagle Group was causing trouble. The first plan was to be carried out at the warrior camp in Moonlit Night City. There were 6 main roads and a few alleys in the middle. Ingqi had a total of 3 shops here. The number of teams had been accurately calculated. 1 team would guard the safe area, 3 teams would guard Ingqi's shops, and the other 6 teams would guard the exits of the main roads. They didn't care about the alleys because no matter how they walked in the alleys, they would have to go through the main roads to get out of this area. The distance and speed had all been calculated. The 10 teams arrived at their designated locations almost at the same time. All right, begin searching. Yun Jongmu gave the order, and the search team quickly entered the area. Chapter 8:33. P. Green Bull had been a professional gamer for many years, but he had never been as successful as he was in the parallel world. Being a professional gamer in an online game was not a glamorous profession. They could barely make ends meet, and the only benefit was that they could earn money by playing the game. However, under the pressure of survival, many professional gamers lost interest in the game. This was a tragedy. What was even more tragic was that this was the final destination for almost every professional gamer. P. Green Bull felt that he was quite lucky. While many of his seniors were playing the game in pain, he was able to play the game happily, and at the same time, he was able to make a living. In the Eagle Group, not only did they receive a fixed salary from Matchless Wonder, the boss of Wonder Studio, but they could also earn some extra money from time to time. The boss, Matchless Wonder, didn't mind them doing this. However, most of their equipment was provided by their boss from his workshop for free, so the owner of the equipment was Matchless Genius. Therefore, if they accidentally dropped any equipment during the process of soliciting private work, they would have to compensate their boss for the loss. However, under the leadership of Eternal, the leader of the Eagle Group, there had never been such an incident. The only 2 incidents were with Team 2. Because the Eagle Group consisted of 3 teams, there were times when the teams would not go through the entire group and would instead go out to do some quests. 2 incidents had happened to Team 2, and both times, the players who died had dropped items. The leader of Team 2 was the original leader of the Eagle Group, Rising Eagle. This made everyone feel that changing the leader to Eternal was a wise decision. Even now, no one knew if Rising Eagle had any feelings towards him. After all, the Eagle Group had already been taken over by Matchless Wonder, and the appointment of personnel could be done with just a word from the boss. In reality, Eternal did a better job than Rising Eagle, and everyone was very satisfied with the change of leader. It was because of Matchless Hero's support and equipment that the members of the Eagle Group became experts one by one. The size of the Eagle Group naturally had to follow Matchless Wonder's arrangements. The new members that joined the Eagle Group were all directly recruited by Matchless Wonder, and when the number of members reached 30, Matchless Wonder did not allow them to recruit new people. After all, he had to spend money to support everyone here. The more people he had, the more expenses he had to bear. As long as he had enough people, it was fine. Matchless Hero had never thought of raising a guild. Of course, some people chose to leave during this process. The one that left the deepest impression on Do Qingwan was Drifting. He was a famous master mage in the parallel world. He had been in the Eagle Group for a while. At that time, the leader was still Soaring Eagle. Originally, the Eagle Group wouldn't be recruiting anymore, but the boss couldn't bear to reject such a famous master like Drifting. However, Drifting and his two companions didn't stay for long before they decided to leave. Little Bean Green Bowl wasn't sure if the boss had asked for them to stay, but he didn't think so. After all, with Matchless Genius's daily needs, 30 people were more than enough. After Drifting, the Eagle Group's lineup had been very stable until Forever became the group leader and continued to serve the boss. They went to many main cities in the southeast, mainly to choose the most luxurious missions in each city for the boss to do. Of course, normal players didn't have such conditions when playing the game, but Matchless Hero was able to reach such a high level under such luxurious conditions. Thinking of the boss's luxurious growth, Little Bean Green Bowl couldn't help but sigh. This was fate. Having money and not having money were really different. But now Little Bean Green Bowl was ranked 13th on the Mage leaderboard. He was quite satisfied with himself. His biggest dream was to surpass Drifting and become the top mage. However, things changed after the city war. Qianli's Drunk became the top mage in the entire game and the top mage leaderboard. Even if he surpassed Drifting, he could only be ranked second on the leaderboard. But Little Bean Green Bowl's goal didn't change. He heard that their mission this time was to fight against Qianli's Drunk. Although he heard that this person was very strong, Little Bean Green Bowl felt that he would disappear from the top 10 mages leaderboard. This was a goal that didn't need to be surpassed. How many PKs have you killed? A voice suddenly interrupted Little Bean Green Bowl's daydream. The person who asked the question was called Lulan, ranked 14th on the Archer leaderboard. He and Little Bean Green Bowl were currently hunting in the warrior camp area. Both of them were long-ranged classes, so they had good equipment and high attack. Their coordination was also very good. Basically, any character that couldn't reach them would be killed. However, after hunting for a day, the 10 Guild Alliance's players were becoming more and more cautious. There were fewer and fewer solo players. The brothers at the revival points hadn't opened for business in a while. Lulan thought that since there wasn't much business, he might as well go and clear his PK points. Speaking of which, the intense battle with Cloud Morning's 50 or so players had put a lot of pressure on the members of the Eagle Corps. At that time, they all had PK points. They thought that their opponents would be easy to deal with, but they didn't expect them to be so fearless. At that time, 4 members of the Eagle squad had almost died. Fortunately, the squad leader Forever had set up a proper formation, and he had a better grasp of everyone's lives. Those who were about to die were quickly protected by the squad, but it was inevitable that they would experience such a frightening experience. Even though this was a quest for the boss and they didn't have to pay for the equipment they dropped, if the losses were severe, it would mean that they didn't complete the quest well. The boss didn't want them to pay for the equipment, so he would deduct their bonuses. I have 7 points. Little Bean Green Bowl replied. I have 4 points. We haven't seen anyone in a while. Why don't we go and clear our PK points? Lulan said. That's a good idea. Little Bean Green Bowl nodded. They hadn't killed anyone in a while, so it was quite boring to just walk around on the streets. After the two of them finished their discussion, they headed towards the wanted quest office. When they passed by a large street, there was a shop that belonged to Ingenious. The two of them looked around and saw that there were a few dozen people gathered in front of the shop. They didn't know what they were doing. The two of them knew that something was wrong. They looked at each other and pretended like nothing was happening as they walked over. They didn't need to get too close. Lulan's eagle eye could see clearly from a few dozen meters away. His expression changed, It's the 10 guilds people. Guard the shop. They've guessed our strategy, Little Bean Green Bowl said. Hurry and report this to the leader, Lu Lan said as he sent a message to Eternal. At the same time, the two of them turned around and didn't dare to walk past the shop. Although they were experts, there were only two of them. They didn't dare to fight against a few dozen people. There were no rookies in the 10 Guild Alliance. Eternal didn't panic when he received Lu Lan's message. He even laughed. There are too many shops. Can they guard all of them? A few dozen people? Aren't they just giving themselves up for us to kill? Everyone in the districts, look at the distribution of troops guarding the shops. The messages from the districts came back at different times, but the conclusion was the same. There were no guards outside the shop. Eternal finally realized that the situation wasn't as simple as it seemed. At the same time, Lu Lan sent another message. There were many people from the 10 Guild Alliance in the area around the warrior camp. However, the two of them hadn't been discovered yet and were currently looking for a way out. What are you waiting for? Use the teleportation scrolls and leave immediately, Eternal shouted anxiously. In the end, he didn't receive a reply. Eternal went silent twice, but there was still no reply. He knew that the two of them must have encountered enemies and couldn't spare the effort to reply to his message. In the arrangement of the 10 Society Alliance, the people guarding the street did not have to guard it as they did to the shops. After all the points were occupied, they could shrink a little from the street entrance as long as they did not expose any of the entrances of the alleys. The real search team had already entered the district and scattered into the alleys. Lu Lan and Green Bean Bowl turned left and right and kept finding people from the 10 Guild Alliance. The more people there were, the more obvious the target would be. The two of them could always avoid them in advance. After turning around, they realized that there were fewer and fewer paths. The two of them felt that something was wrong. At this moment, Eternal's message arrived. Everyone in the Eagle group had teleportation scrolls. Just as the two of them were about to grab the scrolls, an arrow suddenly flew towards them. The two of them were startled and quickly dodged. The two of them were very experienced and instantly determined the direction of the arrow. When they looked up, they saw 6 players rushing towards them. Lu Lan's eagle eyes were sharp. He realized that one of the 6 people was from the 10 Guild Alliance. He almost forgot that there were people from the 10 Guild Alliance on the move. He was careless and didn't notice these 6 people. Green Bean Bowl glanced at them and his heart skipped a beat. He couldn't see the badge on the chest of the player from the 10 Guild Alliance, but he felt that one of the sorcerers looked familiar. Could it be him? As Green Bean Bowl was thinking, the 6 people had already rushed a few steps closer. Archer, Mage, Warrior, Pugilist, Priest, Rogue. Lu Lan reported the classes of the 6 people in one breath. Experienced experts could basically tell their classes from their attire. The opponent's sorcerer attacked almost as Lu Lan spoke. With a wave of his staff, Green Bean Bowl glanced at the opponent's direction and dragged Lu Lan to dodge. The difficulty of this dodge was surprisingly low. The two of them just casually took a few steps forward and were already out of the attack range of the spell. However, as experts, the two of them didn't think that the opponent's sorcerer was too crude. On this day, the taming will actually didn't place the two of them at the core of the spell. An AoE spell wasn't something that players couldn't dodge. Even if they were in the middle of the spell, as long as their judgment was accurate, they would have enough time to dodge the spell. The opposing mage clearly understood this point, so he chose to place the two of them in a corner. This way, the two of them could easily dodge the spell if they moved forward or left, but they couldn't move backward or right. Green Bean Bowl made a good judgment and dodged it easily, but he had to further close the distance between him and the 6 people. The purpose of this spell wasn't to attack them, but to cut off their escape route. The two of them quickly understood this method. Under continuous attacks, the teleportation scroll would definitely be interrupted, and they wouldn't have a chance to use it at all. However, it wasn't a solution to be forced to the front step by step. The 6 opponents weren't scary, but it would be troublesome if the 6 opponents were already close to them. After all, the two of them were long-range classes that were afraid of close combat. In an instant, the opponent's sorcerer had already raised his hand to continue chanting, but Lu Lan turned around and said to Green Bean Bowl, "Ignore it, run." "No." Green Bean Bowl desperately held onto Lu Lan. Lu Lan was startled, and he didn't resist. He thought that the opponent's sorcerer was still using the same method, trying to take the damage of a spell to increase the distance between them. However, when he saw Green Bean Bowl pulling him, he thought that the opponent wasn't using the same method this time. After all, Green Bean Bowl was a master sorcerer, and he had more accurate judgment of the sorcerer's spells. Lu Lan followed Green Bean Bowl a few steps to the side, and it wasn't hard for him to dodge the spell. He was startled, and realized that the opponent was still using the same method. He thought that Green Bean Bowl had made a mistake, but Green Bean Bowl explained to him, "Don't you recognize that sorcerer? That's drifting." Drifting? Lu Lan was startled, and then he understood why Green Bean Bowl didn't let him take the damage and run. Drifting had been in their Eagle party before, and this all-knowing sorcerer in the parallel world had shockingly high damage. None of the sorcerers in the fully equipped Eagle party could compare to him. They couldn't take his spells head-on. At the very least, they had to get some equipment that could resist magic damage. Otherwise, the risk was too high. They might not be able to kill him instantly, but who knew if he had any follow-up tricks up his sleeve? Kill him first. Lu Lan raised his hand and shot, showing no mercy to his old friend. Green Bean Bowl didn't hesitate. Drifting was a goal that he wanted to surpass, and it wouldn't be a bad idea to kill him here. Lu Lan's arrow was very fast, almost arriving in a flash. However, the warrior who had been rushing forward suddenly raised his left hand and held his shield horizontally, firmly blocking Lu Lan's arrow. Green Bean Bowl's chain fireball was a lot slower, and it hit the shield without any suspense. Almost at the same time, a white light bathed the warrior, but Lu Lan and Green Bean Bowl didn't see where the cleric was. The moment the opponent charged forward, the cleric had already hidden behind someone. He was able to hide so well, and it was obvious that he was very good at cooperating. The warrior put away his shield after blocking the attack, but he didn't expect that the fireball that exploded in front of the shield was still there. Bang, bang, bang. The fireball kept exploding as it continued to fly forward. This was out of everyone's expectations. The warrior wanted to stop it, but it was too late. The fireball exploded and was about to reach Drifting. Drifting hurriedly raised his staff and chanted, "Scatter, Ice Shadow." 4 drifts appeared in an instant, and the exploding fireballs surrounded one of them. The explosion engulfed that Drifting's afterimage in the blink of an eye. Then, it continued to explode while flying forward for a long time before gradually disappearing. What a pity! Green Bean Bowl cried in his heart. His fireball combo was strengthened by the skills of his equipment. Compared to the ordinary fireball combo, there were some changes. That was, the explosion effect could be sustained, and the duration was determined by the caster. However, it was not the kind of spell that consumed mana continuously. Instead, the caster could determine the mana consumption of the spell once and for all during the chant. Thus, after the explosion, until all the magic power was used up, the explosion would continue. The Green Bean Bowl had once used 100% of its magic power to create a candied haw with this move, and a white light flashed. Drifting was experienced, and he knew that this spell was not ordinary. He didn't even dare to dodge, afraid that something strange would happen. He simply used Ice Shadow, which was also a kind of teleportation. As soon as he landed, Drifting raised his staff and was about to attack. Although Lu Lan knew that he had to interrupt Drifting, there were still 3 Drifting in the field, and he didn't know which one was the real one. In a panic, he raised his bow and twisted his body, shooting 2 consecutive arrows in different directions. Lu Lan accurately grasped the tiny gap between the 2 arrows and twisted his body. The 2 consecutive arrows were aimed at different Drifting. Unfortunately, Drifting was interrupted. His opponent chose 2 out of 3, and there was a 66% chance that he guessed Drifting's real body. Drifting dodged the arrows, but unfortunately he couldn't chant the spell. But it was only temporary. After he teleported, Drifting raised his staff again. Lu Lan was depressed. The 3 Drifting figures all did the same thing. His 2 arrows were all dodged, so he was sure that one of them was Drifting's real body, but he didn't know which one it was. Green Bean Bowl was indeed a master. He seemed to have expected this. When Drifting dodged, he immediately used Skyfall Fire Wheel to buckle one of the drifting figures, and Lu Lan hurriedly shot an arrow at the other one. Both drifting figures had been attacked, so it was inevitable that their chanting would be interrupted. But then they found that Drifting didn't dodge. Under the two attacks, Drifting disappeared instantly, but there was no white light of death. The two were stunned, and then they realized what was going on. They looked at the third Drifting and shouted, "Fuck!" It turned out that the two drifting figures were just illusions. Drifting deliberately dodged Lu Lan's arrow, and the two thought that one of the two drifting figures was his real body, so they focused their attention on the two targets. The one they thought was an illusion was Drifting's real body. At this time, an unstoppable spell was released. Double Lotus Fire. Drifting's real attack didn't even have time to chant. Two waves of fire rolled over. The large area of effect made Lu Lan and Green Bean Bowl unable to dodge, and they were burned. This area of effect attack wasn't like Skyfall Fire Wheel, which only dealt 1 damage. It was like Flaming 3000 Layers of Flames, which had a continuous effect. The two saw that Drifting was still in his position, and they knew that this was a spell that could continuously inject mana to maintain damage. If the two were hit for a few more seconds, they would definitely die. Lu Lan hurriedly shot an arrow at Drifting, and then rushed forward with Green Bean Bowl. If they hit the target, they could naturally interrupt the spell, but they didn't dare to put all their hopes on it. Looking at the current situation, they could still rush out of the sea of fire safely. Of course, it would be better if they could hit Drifting. In the end, a person stepped out and used his body to block the arrow flying towards him. It was impossible to interrupt the spell, so the two hurriedly rushed out of the sea of fire, but they saw that the warrior had already blocked them with a sword and a shield. An archer and a sorcerer wanted to rush through the warrior. The two's hearts sank. Chapter 8:34. Pi Qingwan was also valiant. Seeing that it would be extremely difficult to break through the warrior's blockade, the moment he rushed out, he rolled up a spell and prepared to chant a rapid fireball. With such a close distance between them, the damage they received after his enhanced version of rapid fireball exploded was not much different. Warriors had high HP, but mages had high magic defense. It was hard to say who would die first under the same amount of magic damage. But no matter what, this was a lose-lose strategy. The chances of both sides dying together were very high. P. Green Bowl had learned this move from wuxia novels. He was basically going to die, so he used a suicidal move. Most of the time, it was the opponent who treasured his life and dodged. Hence, he often gained the upper hand. This move was quite useful in the game. After all, everyone treasured their levels the most. Almost no one was willing to sacrifice a level for the sake of killing someone else. But the game was different from wuxia novels. At least right now, the opponent had a cleric who could heal them, while Green Bean Bowl had Flowing Wind, who was on the verge of death. That was why the warrior didn't dodge at all. When Green Bean Bowl's spell was cast, the warrior raised his hand and swung his shield at Green Bean Bowl's head. The difference in strength between a warrior and a mage was like two extremes. If they fought like this, the mage would definitely be sent flying. Green Bean Bowl was sent flying by the warrior just like that. This display of strength made the warrior look very mighty, but in reality, experienced warriors would rarely do this in real PvP. This was because warriors were slow, very slow, and the speed of movement in the game was also related to attributes and equipment. This had always been a controversial setting, so if a warrior really did send someone flying in a PvP, and then the opponent stood up and ran, there was a high chance that they would not be able to catch up. Warriors had to work very hard to get the chance to fight in close combat. They didn't cherish the opportunity. If they sent someone flying, they wouldn't be able to kill them. Of course, the situation was different now. Green Bean Bowl was sent flying back into Drifting's flames. Seeing that the two of them had rushed out of the sea of fire, Drifting was about to let others deal with them. When he was about to extinguish the spell, he suddenly saw that the Green Pea Bowl was sent back, so he had to add more fire. The Green Pea Bowl did not have much HP left in the first place. After being slapped away by the warrior, the green pea bowl was tossed into the sea of fire to roast. Finally, before the green pea bowl could do anything, its HP had been whittled away. With his death, the power of his chain of fireballs immediately disappeared. Although the warrior was a little shocked by the explosion, he didn't care anymore. However, Pea Green Bowl's death had some other value. Due to the exchange of blows between him and the warrior, Flowing Mist seized the opportunity to dash past the warrior. As long as he could break through this obstacle, with the speed of the 14th ranked archer, his chances of escaping would increase greatly. However, Lu Lan did not expect that when he ran past the warrior, a staff would suddenly come out from the side and trip his foot. Lu Lan couldn't dodge in time. Although she didn't fall immediately, she stumbled. From the corner of his eyes, he saw a priest crouching behind the warrior. This strike was from the priest who had stretched out his staff. This trip did not cause any damage, but Lu Lan knew that because of this trip, he had completely lost his chance to escape. A gust of wind blew past his face, and a fist had already flown in front of him. Lu Lan's unsteady body continued to stagger as she was hit. She swayed and hit the wall. Lu Lan didn't even have time to make any adjustments. The opponent's attack had already quickly followed up. With such a strong chain of attacks, it was obvious that it was a grandmaster of combat in the game. Lu Lan, who didn't have much health left, was also killed off in a few hits from her left hand. The two of them were successfully killed, and the group of 6 heaved a sigh of relief. The battle wasn't as simple as it looked, and there were many perils in between. In particular, Pea Bowl's enhanced chain of fireballs was very strange. If it wasn't for the fact that he died quickly after falling into the drifting flames, Kenan-Yu suspected that the chain of fireballs would have blown him up. With the speed at which his HP was decreasing, Kenan-Yu didn't know if Dao Xiangmu, who was behind him, could be saved. The warrior was Kenan-Yu, the priest was Dao Xiangmu, and the Grandmaster of Combat and Archer were, of course, Left Hand Love and Right Hand Handsome. As for the thief, he was just a random member of the 10 Meetings Alliance. During the battle, he wanted to rush forward, but he realized that he couldn't do anything. The battle between these top experts had quick thinking and quick changes. While he was still thinking about what to do next, he didn't even know how many rounds they had fought. "How are you?" Of course, Drifting stopped casting spells and asked Kenan-Yu. He saw Kenan-Yu's expression change after he was hit by the chain of fireballs. He felt that there was something strange about that spell, and as a magician, he was naturally interested. Almost. Kenan-Yu was a little scared. It was more powerful than normal chain of fireballs, and it lasted longer. If it continued, a priest wouldn't be able to offset the damage. As expected, they have some skills, Drifting said. Didn't you play with them before? Do you know them? Kenan-Yu asked. Drifting shook his head. I haven't seen them in a long time, so I don't have much of an impression. However, I should be able to recognize their old leader, Soaring Eagle. Drifting had traveled all over the place, and he knew people like he was looking at flowers on horseback. In the end, the people who knew him were far more than the people he knew. At this moment, Dao Xiangmu, who was behind Kenan-Yu, came out. With an agility that didn't match a priest's, he quickly rushed to the place where the two of them had died. He almost dug up the ground to check, but in the end, he said in disappointment, "So unlucky, nothing dropped." He was unlucky, but to Green Bean Bowl and Flowing Mist, it was their biggest fortune. The two of them had PK points, so after dying, they would definitely lose 2 levels. As soon as the revival point appeared, they immediately checked their equipment. The only consolation was that they didn't drop any equipment. Then, they reported the bad news to Forever. When Forever didn't receive a reply from the two of them, he knew that they were in trouble. Then he immediately reminded the others to not hesitate and immediately teleport away if they noticed any similar movements. Then he waited for the two of them to reply, hoping that they would have a chance to escape. When the two of them finally replied, they both died. He could only sigh in regret. With 30 people against 4,000 people from the 10 Guild Alliance, honestly speaking, Forever didn't expect that there wouldn't be any sacrifices. However, he still hoped that the losses would be as low as possible. After going through so much trouble for the entire day, even when fighting against Yun Zhongmu's valiant team, not a single person died. Forever was quite satisfied, but who would have thought that they would lose 2 levels each? They didn't even know about such a large-scale movement. While waiting for news from the two of them, Forever went to ask the informants that he had bribed. In the end, the informants all stupidly said that there was nothing going on. When Forever asked where they were, he found out that they were in the warrior camp area, but they said that they were helping guild members do quests. Now, Forever's heart was clear. This time, the enemy's movements were extremely fast. By the time they found out, it was already too late to salvage the situation. When Forever saw this, he immediately gave orders to his subordinates in the other regions. Don't wait for anything strange to happen before teleporting away. Immediately retreat. The enemy had clearly considered the problem of manpower, so they moved one region at a time. Fortunately, there were only 2 people in the warrior camp area. If the enemy had chosen the Mage Academy from the start, their losses would have been even greater. The Eagle Party had a total of 5 people roaming around the Mage Academy area. Their distribution of people was also meticulous. There were 7 revival points, but because of the different geographical locations, the popularity of each revival point was different. It wasn't necessary for players to return to the revival point of their profession to log in and out. Because the Mage Academy was the closest to the leveling area, the Mage Academy in Moonlit Night City had the most player movement. As such, it became the focus of the Eagle Party's ambush. Forever couldn't see the enemy's movements clearly, so he had them temporarily disperse. Then he went to find Green Bean Bowl and Flowing Mist to understand the situation. Green Bean Bowl and Flowing Mist had directly died in the main city where their accounts were located. At this moment, they used a teleportation scroll and directly flew back. Forever didn't need to walk anymore. He directly teleported and the 3 of them immediately met up at the same location. In the game, financial support was undoubtedly a huge help. Just the teleportation scrolls alone were enough for Gu Fei to torment the Unchung Mutsu Black Index Finger and the others to death. At this time, the Eagle Party had a strong backer, so they didn't lack these items. Moreover, this was a battle of revenge for the boss. A player who was willing to pay 30 people to serve him in the game obviously wasn't a stingy person. Before the battle began, these items were already given to Forever and Flowing Mist. At this moment, Forever had a rough idea of the enemy's arrangements. After listening to Green Bean Bowl and Flowing Mist's description, it was basically the same as what he expected. However, when he heard that the enemy was drifting, his expression changed. Drifting? Why would he come here and help the 10 Guild Alliance? Forever couldn't understand. As players far away in the other corner of the world, they didn't know that drifting was currently in Very Overpowered. 5 Knights' actions against Very Overpowered, but he didn't care about the exact details. He was someone who only cared about the results. He used the guild to complete the battle, so he didn't care about it. He only knew that Very Overpowered was a guild established by Qianli Drunk and the others. In the city battle, if the defenders won, they would receive a bunch of rewards. I think the 10 Guild Alliance probably specially hired some experts to deal with us? Green Bean Bowl guessed. At that time, he had started fighting and didn't even greet drifting. Moreover, from the way he looked at drifting, it seemed like he didn't know them. That's possible. Forever nodded. Then, he asked for more details about the enemy's combat team. Of course, it wasn't surprising that the left hand wrote love and the right hand wrote handsome. Those who knew drifting would probably have a deeper impression of these two. In that battle, apart from drifting, the warrior's performance was also very eye-catching. There was also the priest who hid behind the warrior. Lu Lan had the deepest impression of him. Warrior? Could it be Cloud Cities unscathed in battle? Forever was quite concerned about this expert. I don't think so. Unscathed in battle is a berserk warrior, right? But that warrior was holding a shield in one hand. Green Bean Bowl said, shields required a shield attribute. Currently, only warriors had this ability. For other classes, even if you held a shield, it was the same as not having one. Maybe he's also an expert from the outside. Lulan said, if that's the case, then there might be more people coming. There might be other experts. Forever said, The two were silent. Soaring Eagle Shisan. Forever called out in their Eagle group channel. The two replied at the same time. You two take a look around and see what the enemy is planning at the spawn points. Forever said. Okay. The two replied. Both of them were thieves. Sneaking around and scouting was something that thieves often did. However, both of them were assassins. In terms of stealth, Godly Thief class advancement would be even more effective. However, Godly Thieves were slightly weaker than Assassins. Currently, there were more Assassins in the Thief class. Kite. Forever called out. Here. Kite's full name was One Kite. He was ranked second on the Archer leaderboard. In the Eagle group, apart from Forever who was ranked first on the Knight leaderboard, he was the next highest ranked player. Go to the church on Luminous 2nd Street and keep an eye out for any unusual movements, Forever instructed. Before coming to Moonlit City, they had studied the terrain. The church on Nightlight 2nd Street wasn't the tallest. However, after reaching the top floor, they could see a large area through the windows on all four sides. Forever was meticulous. The tallest place would attract attention. Perhaps the opponent would think of using it to their advantage, so he chose this place. What about me? Lulan, who was beside Forever, asked. This kind of scouting mission was naturally handled by Hawkeye's Archer. Forever kite One Kite, but didn't call for him. You rest for a while. One kite is enough. Forever patted Lulan. Everyone else rest for a while. We'll wait for further information. After saying this in the chat, Forever went to contact the spies he had bribed. He told them to let him know if there was any movement, no matter what it was. At this moment, the 10 Guilds Alliance erupted into thunderous cheers. Cloud Twilight's face was flushed with excitement. He had finally vented some of the anger he had been holding in for the entire day. He could finally hold his head high in the guild. The Eagle group is a paper tiger. Yun Zhongmu emphasized this time with great confidence and confidence. However, many people in the guild didn't even know about this operation. As such, Cloud Twilight didn't tell them about their complicated arrangements. He only said that a 6-man scouting party encountered 2 players and easily took them down. Look, the opponents are only SOSO. Once they're alone, they can be easily killed. Cloud Twilight said. He didn't even mention the composition of his 6-man scouting party. In reality, there was only one person from their guild, and apart from pointing out the enemy, he wouldn't be of any help in the battle. The guild players didn't care about all this. Once they heard the news of victory, they felt energized. They all asked their guild leader to join the scouting party. In the end, Cloud Twilight said righteously, "We'll take turns and search for him 24/7. Just Eagle Group, how dare they rebel?" The guild erupted in cheers once again. Cloud Twilight calmed everyone down and returned to the table. He looked at the experts he invited and said humbly, "What should we do next? I think the opponents aren't stupid. This operation can only be done once. If we change to another area, it'll be useless." Han family young master nodded his head. However, they know that we have the ability to kill them. Moreover, Drifting has infiltrated their Eagle group before, so they might have already recognized us. Since they know that there are experts here to help, I think they'll bide their time and try to understand the situation. I didn't tell anyone that you guys are here to help. Those who know are trustworthy brothers. Cloud Twilight said. Han family young master nodded his head. Let them do as they please. We'll think about how to lure them out. You have a plan? Cloud Twilight said. A system notification sounded. Brother, you came back online. As the weakest member of the elite group, Brother, you didn't need to do anything. As such, everyone gave him an important mission. Go offline and call Qianli. Qianli is coming. Brother, you had gone offline to do this during the scouting operation. This news was extremely exciting. When Cloud Twilight heard it, he rubbed his hands together happily. Isn't everything easier now that he's here? Give him the name list. Han family young master said. Cloud Twilight's eyes lit up when he heard this. Of course, he knew about the special function of Gu Fei's wanted license. Yesterday, Gu Fei was doing a wanted mission in Moonlit Night City. Thanks to Cloud Twilight's help, He provided quite a few names. That's great. That's great. Yun Zhongmu beamed with joy. Gu Fei did things swiftly and decisively. He had probably just received the call. Not long after Brother Yu came online, the system notification of Qianli coming online flashed in everyone's system notifications. Where are the experts? Gu Fei asked. Everyone knew how Brother Yu had invited him online. There are a lot of them, and they aren't easy to deal with. The experts in the chat said seriously. Who fought against them? Gu Fei asked. Me and Jian fought against two. Drifting said. How was it? Gu Fei asked. It was a close one. Drifting said. He was killed by you guys? How can that be considered an expert? Gu Fei's voice was filled with disappointment. The experts in the chat didn't have any interest in it. You guys can handle it. I'll go rest. Gu Fei said. The experts were speechless. Could it be that they couldn't handle it? That would hurt their pride. If you didn't have that stupid wanted license that can find people's coordinates, would we need to call you over? Don't be so long-winded. Hurry up and be a guide dog. Han family young master said with disdain. Who are you looking for? Gu Fei asked. Qianli should also come and understand the whole story. Brother, you said. Everyone was speechless. The whole story hadn't been told yet. That meant that Qianli didn't even ask why he wanted to kill people and excitedly came up. Moreover, he didn't ask for the reason but instead asked where the experts were. What a violent maniac. Chapter 8:35. Bring some experts along as well. The cautious Brother Yu naturally hoped for as many people as possible, so he added this to Gu Fei. They also knew that many experts came to help because of Gu Fei. For example, Slender Waist Dance, 100 Times Statecraft, Boundless Mang, and Sakurazuka Tsukuzi's Flower Cluster. These people's relationships were actually established through Gu Fei. The relationship between them and the others could not be said to be close, but it could not be said to be close either. Coming. After Gu Fei responded, he asked for everyone's location. In less than a minute, the tavern door opened and Gu Fei came in. Everyone was shocked. No matter which revival point in Moonlit Night City, it wouldn't be this quick to come to this tavern. Everyone looked at Gu Fei suspiciously. When he sat down, they immediately asked, How did you get here so quickly? Oh, I received a wanted quest and teleported, Gu Fei said. What do you mean? Everyone didn't understand. Didn't Drifting in Big South PK just now? I tried to receive it and then teleported to a nearby location with the wind-chasing emblem. Isn't that a lot faster? Gu Fei said. Who did you get? Drifting couldn't help but ask. Is there any suspense? Jian smiled. He did participate in the battle, but the PK points didn't go to him. The 2 PK points went to Drifting and Love Left Hand. Drifting also thought of this. He glanced at Gu Fei, who was looking at him. Gu Fei nodded and said, If you are about to die, I can send you to the dungeon. Thank you. Drifting moved a bench and sat far away from Gu Fei. Gu Fei accepted this quest purely for the convenience of traveling. His wanted quest record had been broken yesterday, so he didn't care if he couldn't complete another quest. After the necessary greetings were done, everyone explained the current situation in a few words. When Gu Fei heard that the Ten Society Alliance had gotten into trouble for helping them, he couldn't avoid it anymore. He immediately asked Yun Zhongmu, Who do you want to find? Forever. Yun Zhongmu immediately reported the name of the leader of the Eagle Group. Gu Fei immediately did as he was told. After searching, he said helplessly, No, why not? Everyone was shocked. Because he doesn't have PK points. Gu Fei looked at the experts like they were idiots. Everyone was ashamed, but they hadn't used it before. It was forgivable if they didn't have experience. Find another one. Gu Fei said to Yun Zhongmu. Here's the name list. Brother Yu went overboard and handed over the names of all 30 members of the Eagle Group. Gu Fei immediately searched for one and glared at Brother Yu. How do I find someone who's not online? There's someone offline. Brother Yu moved his head closer. Of course, the name list they had didn't include the information of the Eagle Group. Eternal was the first in line, and the second in line was a comrade from Team 3, who was currently offline. 8H Shisan, 8H Shisan. Cloud Twilight provided another name. Logically speaking, the 10 Societies Alliance's hatred for the 30 members of the Eagle Group didn't differ much. However, 8 and Zison were too arrogant. They went straight into the crowd and killed people. After they were done, they even announced their names loudly outside. Naturally, their hatred was greater. When Yun Zhongmu saw that he couldn't capture King for the time being, he immediately threw him out. Weird name, Gu Fei said as he searched. He was pleasantly surprised. Found it. Then, just as Cloud Twilight said the word, that Gu Fei had already disappeared in a flash of white light. Disorganized and undisciplined. Han family young master took a sip of his wine and said in disdain. The problem is, we're going to kill them, not send them to the dungeon, right? Brother, you said in a daze. That's why he ran so fast. He still has to wait. Han family young master said. I'll send him a message. Brother Yu was just too worried. He immediately sent a message to Gu Fei. On the streets of moonlit Night City, 8H Shisan was strolling around as if nothing had happened. He disapproved of Eternal's cautiousness. Killing the target in the midst of the opponent's crowd and then retreating unscathed made Bison's confidence inflated, and he despised the 10 Societies Alliance to the extreme. He had never been a person who knew how to be humble. At this moment, he didn't even use stealth. He was just walking on the streets. He felt that even if he encountered a large group of people, he could use stealth, teleportation scroll, or just rely on his speed to escape. There were many ways to escape. He was currently scouting the Knight's camp. In fact, their people had just left the district. There was no ambush at all. However, Eagle, who was scouting the warriors' camp, had just sent news that the enemy's ambush at the warriors' camp had ended. It was possible for them to switch to the Knight's camp. Although 8H Shisan was arrogant, his attitude was still very proper. Although he didn't hide himself very well, he still observed his surroundings very carefully. Everything on the streets was normal. There was nothing unusual. 8H Shisan had just stayed near a Ingchi shop for a while, but he didn't see the other party organize people to come over. It's nothing, 8H Shisan muttered as he continued to walk forward. There was a crossroad ahead. 8H Shisan walked to the crossroad and was thinking about which direction to go when he heard someone call, 8H Shisan, someone is looking for you. 8H Shisan subconsciously turned around and saw a person leaning against the wall on the right corner. He was wearing a black robe and had a dark purple longsword in his hand. He was looking at him with a smile. 8H Shisan's heart tightened. Black cloak, purple sword. This target was too obvious. For example, a normal mage who was mistaken for 1,000 miles drunk was usually dressed in black. Up until now, no one had been able to disguise this dark purple longsword. Qianli drunk. 8H Shisan said in a deep voice. After a moment of shock, he immediately calmed down. He wasn't afraid of Qianli drunk. He had dared to assassinate Qianli drunk when he was in a group of people. Now that he met him one-on-one, 8H Shisan was more excited than nervous. After seeing the other party nod, 8H Shisan carefully looked around. He was worried that Qianli would bring people to attack him when he was drunk. Everything was normal, and he didn't see anyone unusual. Qianli drunk had already picked up his sword and walked towards him. He said with a smile, I heard that you're very arrogant. Yun Zhongmu really hoped that 8H Shisan would die a horrible death. After Gu Fei had teleported away, he still followed the news and told Gu Fei about 8H Shisan's misdeeds. Gu Fei didn't think much of it. He only hoped that this arrogant guy had some real skills. But frankly speaking, Gu Fei didn't have much hope of this. He had been disappointed too many times. No matter how good a game master was, it was nothing to him. If you wanted to compete with him, you couldn't do it without professional combat skills. 8H Shisan was arrogant, but he was still quite cautious when he saw that they were about to fight. He didn't answer Gu Fei at all. His figure sank and disappeared. I heard that you know anti-stealth. I'd like to see it. 8H Shisan was gone, but he was still talking. However, this was intentional. As soon as he finished speaking, he immediately moved to the side. He pretended to be careless and let people identify his position, but in fact, he had already dodged to the side to prepare an ambush. In the end, he was disappointed. Gu Fei didn't move when he heard him speak. Instead, he chatted with him. "Yes, so I know where you are now." After saying that, Gu Fei raised his sword and pointed the tip of the sword at where 8H Shisan was. 8H Shisan wasn't blind. He saw it clearly. He was shocked and quickly moved to the side. In the end, Gu Fei circled around on the spot. The tip of the sword was still pointing at 8H Shisan's position. "See, I didn't lie to you, did I?" Gu Fei smiled. He knew that 8H Shisan was looking at him very seriously. Otherwise, how could his aura be so strong? The more 8H Shisan stared at him, the more Gu Fei knew where he was. Of course, 8H Shisan didn't know this. In his shock, he stared at Gu Fei and moved left and right. In the end, the tip of Gu Fei's sword followed him left and right. It was really accurate. At this point, 8H Shisan had to believe it. When Qianli was drunk, he did have a very strong anti-stealth ability. "Not bad," 8H Shisan said and actually exited from stealth. Since his stealth had been completely seen through, there was no point in continuing to do so. After stealth, the reduced movement speed became a burden, so it was better to show himself. 8H Shisan continued to stare at Gu Fei, thinking about how to launch an attack. In the end, he heard Gu Fei ask him, "How much health do you have?" What? 8H Shisan was stunned and replied subconsciously, "It's good to know how much health you have. I'm afraid that if I attack too hard, I'll kill you." Gu Fei was very serious. "Haha." 8H Shisan laughed. "You still say that I'm arrogant? I think you're even worse than me." "I'm not arrogant, I'm telling the truth," Gu Fei said. "Okay, then come and kill me," 8H Shisan said. "It's not that I don't want to, it's that I have no choice. I'm on a wanted mission. If I kill you, you'll go to jail. I don't care, but everyone wants to kill you, not send you to jail." "Helpless," Gu Fei said as he shook his head. "Fuck." 8H Shisan didn't feel that what Gu Fei said was the truth. He only felt that this person's arrogance had no limit. Finally, he couldn't hold it in anymore. With a loud shout, he rushed over with his sword. Gu Fei casually waved his hand, and with a dang sound, he actually cut 8H Shisan's dagger. Although Gu Fei didn't have much strength, with such a strike, 8H Shisan was caught off guard and the dagger was knocked askew. 8H Shisan was very stunned. His combat experience was not lacking, but in all the battles he had experienced, he had never had the experience of two weapons colliding. Either dodge or stab each other, and the weapons clashed. Wouldn't that be a martial arts movie? It's just a coincidence. 8H Shisan determined that this couldn't have been done intentionally by Gu Fei, so he ran out sideways. His speed was extremely fast, and when Gu Fei turned around, he raised his hand and attacked again. Gu Fei turned around, waved his sword, and with a dang sound, 8H Shisan's dagger was knocked away again. 8H Shisan was stunned again, and even stood on the spot. Suddenly, he felt a blur in front of him, and Gu Fei's sword had already slashed at him. He quickly moved to the side and dodged. "Your reaction isn't bad," Gu Fei praised. 8H Shisan thought that went without saying. "But that's all," Gu Fei said. 8H Shisan became more and more angry, and ran around Gu Fei like the wind. He was determined to scoop up Gu Fei's back, and then activate swift movement to kill him. Gu Fei didn't follow him this time, and 8H Shisan easily arrived behind Gu Fei. He immediately rushed forward with both hands holding the dagger tightly. He had already decided that this time, even if Qianli knocked his knife in his drunken stupor, he would hold it tightly and stab it into this guy's body. "Go to hell!" 8H Shisan saw that the knife was about to stab him, and Gu Fei didn't seem to have reacted. He let out an angry roar and used all his strength to stab out. In the end, 8H Shisan staggered and almost tripped himself. The knife that he stabbed out stabbed into the air. Qianli was drunk and suddenly moved forward a few steps. 8H Shisan couldn't believe it. What was going on? Was his eyes playing tricks on him just now? That was impossible. He was still in a daze. Gu Fei had already said, "What's wrong? It's teleportation. Don't you recognize the skills in the game? Didn't you say he was an expert?" Only then did 8H Shisan come to a realization, but at this time, his stumbling body hadn't stabilized yet. Seeing that Gu Fei wasn't far in front of him, he suddenly rolled his eyes and another evil idea came to mind. He simply didn't stabilize his body on purpose and used the momentum of this stumble to sway over, but his murderous intent was already hidden. Who would have thought that Gu Fei would suddenly fly up with a kick? 8H Shisan had never seen anyone in the game who would raise their feet so high during a PK. Even if it was the Grandmasters of Combat who had attacking methods on their feet, they would only see them jump with flying feet. Such a high foot. What was this? The foot had already landed, and 8H Shisan realized that the foot was about to step on his head. He bent over and pretended to be unstable, but his head was hanging low. 8H Shisan couldn't dodge in time, and his head was stepped on by Gu Fei. With the comparison of his height with Gu Fei, such a thing shouldn't have happened, but this fake stagger gave Gu Fei a chance. What was worse was that although this stagger was half real and half fake, his lower body really wouldn't be stable in such a situation. Even Bai and Shizan themselves might not understand this logic, but how could a professional like Gu Fei not see it? Gu Fei saw clearly where the Type 81 Shisan's center of gravity had shifted when he staggered. He stepped on it and exerted a little force, thus helping the Type 81 Shisan, turning his half-truth into the truth. With a smack, the Type 81 Shisan fell to the ground. What's going on? I was trampled by someone? Yame Zisen couldn't believe that such a thing could happen in a PK. He had actually been trampled to the ground. However, he had no choice but to believe it. Gu Fei's foot was still on the back of his head. Gu Fei didn't hold on to it. As soon as his foot left the ground, Ba Shisan raised his head and was about to get up when he saw something swaying in front of him. Then he felt something tighten around his neck. Something was strangling him. "What are you doing?" Baesuk Shisan only felt that today's PK was extremely incomprehensible to him. What kind of strange fighting style was this? In a hurry, Baesuk Shisan couldn't care less about getting up. He waved his hand to grab the thing around his neck. Gu Fei saw it clearly. With a flick of his wrist, the rope wrapped around Baesuk Shisan's wrist. Baesuk Shisan's hand also happened to be on his neck to remove the rope. Gu Fei's hand shook again, and the rope wrapped around Baesuk Shisan's neck again. Then he pulled it tight, and Baesuk Shisan's hand and neck were immediately pulled together. "Fuck? What are you doing?" Baesuk Shisan was anxious. In the end, he didn't learn his lesson, and his other hand untied the rope. Gu Fei was happy when he saw this. This saved him trouble. He put it on his wrist, wrapped it around his neck, and pulled it tight. His left hand was also pulled to the side of his neck. Baesuk Shisan was shocked. He was about to struggle, but Gu Fei had already quickly made a dead knot behind his neck. He wanted to fight back as soon as possible. Gu Fei's strength was still slightly inferior to his. However, this guy was in a situation that he had never encountered or thought about before. It was just some subconscious actions. He didn't remember things like the judgment of strength in the game. Both of his hands moved to his neck one after another, which made it convenient for Gu Fei. Otherwise, if Gu Fei really wanted to pull him, Gu Fei wouldn't be able to pull his arms. Now that Baesuk Shisan's hands and neck were tied together, it was difficult for him to get up. He arched on the ground like a caterpillar, and it immediately attracted a lot of attention. "What's going on?" someone asked in confusion. Gu Fei didn't answer. He just smiled. Some players saw black shirt and purple sword and suddenly realized who the people in front of them were. Their expressions changed, and they didn't dare to say anything. Why did they care about Qianli's drunken matter? They didn't want to live. There's nothing to see. Everyone, disperse. Disperse. Gu Fei had tormented Baesuk Shisan to such a state, but in turn he took care of his reputation and dispersed the crowd. Baesuk Shisan couldn't escape now. He could only wait for someone to kill him. When he thought of this, Gu Fei suddenly froze. He couldn't kill Baesuk Shisan, but anyone else could, including any player on the street. Why did he have to wait for his own people to come? So Gu Fei casually pulled a player who was looking at Baesuk Shisan curiously. Friend, help me. Hang him up. What? The person was puzzled. Hang him up. Look, he's already tied up. He can't resist. You can hit him and he'll die, said Gu Fei. You're sick? The player cried out in surprise. He broke free from Gu Fei's hand and ran. He looked back 3 times with every step and even looked back from afar. Gu Fei saw that it had caused a misunderstanding. It was better to wait for his own people. Just as he was about to send a message, he suddenly heard a shout. Brother Zue! Gu Fei looked in the direction of the voice. 2 people had already arrived. It was Fireball and Coward Savior. Why did these 2 people come? Because Brother Yu had asked Gu Fei to call more experts. Gu Fei looked at his friends and called them. Fireball was quick. After meeting up with Coward Savior, he got a moonlit night city teleportation scroll and flew over. He landed at the knight's camp, the resurrection point. He came even faster than the people in moonlit night city. You came at the right time, kill this person. Gu Fei said. You wouldn't misunderstand Gu Fei's acquaintance. Fireball looked at Gu Fei with admiration. Brother Zue, your PK value is 29 again? You're too awesome. I'm on a wanted quest. Kill him and he'll go to jail, explained Gu Fei. Oh, I see. Fireball kicked Baesuk Shisan. Baesuk Shisan was still struggling on the ground. He rolled forward. His hands were crossed in front of his neck, but it looked like he was crossing his arms to protect his chest. Fireball was shocked. What are you doing? I'm not raping you. Chapter 8:36. Let go of me. Byasin roared as he was flipped over by Fireball. He was a pretentious and arrogant fellow. Of course, he was also a person who cared about his face. Otherwise, he would have just tied his hands and neck together, and he wouldn't have been unable to even turn over. He didn't turn over because he would rather lie on his stomach and hide his face. His current appearance, whether it was a stranger or an acquaintance, would be extremely embarrassing. But with Fireball's lasciviousness, as soon as he saw Baiyu Shisan's expression, he immediately smiled obscenely and ignored him. He looked at Gu Fei and asked, Brother Zue, how are you going to deal with him? Kill him. Gu Fei didn't waste any more time. What a pity. Fireball was reluctant to part with Byasin's appearance, intentionally stalling for time. Hurry up and kill me. Byasin also changed his words. He felt that it was childish to shout, let go just now. With his current appearance, Byasin didn't care about the loss of his life. He just wanted to die quickly. What's the hurry, brother? Look at how nice the weather is. Let's have a chat. Fireball said. Motherfucker. Byasin cursed angrily. However, Fireball wasn't the type to be angered by mere vulgarities. It continued to smile and was about to say something when Gu Fei, who was beside it, became impatient. Hurry up. What are you waiting for? I'll do it. Coward's savior wasn't as despicable as Fireball. He immediately went forward to help. Fireball hurriedly stopped Coward's savior. Don't do it, I'll do the dirty work. He then turned around and chanted, throwing a fireball at Byasin. Byasin almost fainted when he saw the loss of his HP. It had dropped by about 1%. The bastard in front of him had trash equipment and didn't even use his staff. He was trying to kill him with 100 fireballs. Brother Zhu, do you think he'll still look like this if he dies and is sent to the resurrection point? Fireball chatted with Gu Fei while throwing fireballs. I'm not too sure either, Gu Fei said. Byasin panicked. He didn't know the answer either. If he died and returned to the respawn point, he would still be in this state. What was the point of seeking a quick death? Why don't we drag him to the entrance of the resurrection point, then kill him and observe the system settings in this situation? Fireball looked serious, as if he was doing some important scientific research, but Mayuzumi immediately understood. This bastard wanted to parade him through the streets in his current state. But at this time, when Byasin thought that it was very likely that he would still look like this even if he died and resurrected, he had the desire to live again. He hadn't sent a distress signal to his brothers in the Eagle Regiment because he didn't want them to see him like this. Would they be able to hold their heads up high again? But at this moment he realized that it was useless even if he died, so he couldn't care less. He immediately sent out a message asking for help. He didn't care about being paraded on the streets anymore. Wouldn't this give his brothers time to rescue him? He immediately shouted at the fireball, "How dare you!" He knew that he didn't have the capital to threaten them. Yelling, "You dare?" would only prove to him that they dared to do so. Sure enough, Fireball laughed and said, "Why wouldn't I dare?" After saying that, he began to look around to figure out how to drag Bison away. Yami Shisan was secretly delighted. Forever also replied and asked him what was going on. Just as Yami Shisan was about to describe it, he heard Thousand Miles Drunk say, "Aren't you annoying? Hurry up and kill him. There's something else." Gu Fei also saw through Fireball's thoughts. Although Bison felt that he was the one who caused the humiliation, Gu Fei had no intention of deliberately insulting others. He couldn't kill him, and he was afraid that he would run away. Wouldn't he have to tie him up? It was just that in an online environment, people were not killed but tied up, which was even more unusual. Seeing Fireball deliberately teasing him, Gu Fei couldn't stand it anymore. Fireball was still smiling. "Brother Zui, it's not easy for you to tie him up. It would be a pity to kill him just like that." However, Gu Fei said, "How is it not easy? It's very easy." Bison was so angry that he wanted to vomit blood. He had never been looked down upon like this before. Gu Fei didn't waste time with Fireball and said to the coward savior, "Coward, kill him quickly." "Call me coward savior." The coward's savior came up with some dissatisfaction. This time, Fireball said helplessly, Okay. He reluctantly began to attack Bison seriously. Thus, Fireball finally destroyed Bison with flames and fists. The white light flashed and lit up. Shisan was resurrected. The resurrected Bison was in tears. Because the unfortunate thing finally happened, he was still tied up and appeared at the resurrection point. Resurrection would remove some of the debuffs on the player, such as dizziness, slow down, silence, and so on. However, the system didn't seem to care about his tied-up hands. Fortunately, Bison resurrected standing up, which made him a lot less embarrassed. Although there were people coming and going in the resurrection point, if one didn't pay attention, they wouldn't notice that Bison was tied up. Bison hurriedly moved to a corner and sat down, hiding his appearance. The terrifying onlookers finally didn't appear. "Bison, what's going on? Why aren't you saying anything?" Bison's messages kept flashing. It was Eternity calling him. Bison suddenly didn't reply. Eternity's heart sank again. He had a bad feeling. Qianli is a lunatic, a pervert. Bison replied to Eternity. "You met him?" Eternity hurriedly asked. Bison had only called for help before. He didn't have time to explain the details. "It's him." Bison gritted his teeth. "What's going on?" Eternity asked. "What's going on?" Bison felt the bindings between his neck and wrists in a daze. Why did this happen? Bison couldn't explain it clearly. What was going on? He also wanted to know. After destroying Bison, Gu Fei sent a message to Yun Zhongmu, telling them not to come. Han family young master was furious when he heard this. "Didn't I tell you to wait?" "Wait for what? I've got helpers. Let's destroy him," Gu Fei said. "Damn, we'll use him as bait to lure out all the opponents and kill them all in one fell swoop," Han family young master said. "It's nothing. I'll look for them one by one." Gu Fei took out the list and prepared to search for the next one. Then find Eternity. Han family young master wasn't in a good mood. "Why do you care so much about this Eternity?" Gu Fei asked. "He's the group leader," Han family young master said. "Oh, it's only a matter of time," Gu Fei said as he searched through the list of 30 people. 10 of them were offline and 6 had no PK value. 14 people had been targeted by Gu Fei, including Bison, who had just suffered a tragedy. If Gu Fei didn't kill him, then the mission wasn't over. Yun Zhongmu and the others had been rushing over. Gu Fei and the others were about to rush to the next target, but they encountered this large group of people. Brother Yu was surprised to see Fireball and Coward Savior. "Why you guys here?" "Brother Zue told me to come," Fireball said. Brother, you looked at Gu Fei. Gu Fei looked at him in confusion. Didn't you say to call more people? I think I said to call experts. Brother, you said. Gu Fei patted his chest. The group was helpless and could only ask Gu Fei what to do next. Gu Fei pointed at the list and said, I've already found 14 people. I can find them at any time. But if you don't let me kill them, then it'll be a bit troublesome. Gu Fei had been lucky to capture Bison. Gu Fei didn't think the chances of success were high if he had to exchange Bison for a warrior. That's not important. Qianli, just tell me the coordinates at any time. I'll organize people to surround and capture them. Yun Zhongmu hurriedly said. When Gu Fei saw this, he realized that he was really just a navigator. He didn't even need to kill people. He had no choice but to announce the coordinates. Yun Zhongmu also quickly organized people. Because the targets were displayed, the opponents were basically scattered. At most, they were in groups of 2 or 3, so they didn't need too many people. Yun Zhongmu relied on their familiarity with the city's terrain. After forming many teams, they began to surround and kill the people whose coordinates were known. Bison's coordinates caught everyone's attention. These coordinates could be said to be 108,000 miles away from Qianli. They clearly weren't from Moonlit Night City. From the looks of it, they didn't register in Moonlit Night City. When they died, they went back home. Brother, you said. Unfortunately, we've already used it on him once. Gu Fei said regretfully. It can teleport that far? Brother, you was shocked. It said that it's a temporary function. Gu Fei said. What do you mean it's a temporary function? Brother, you asked. Didn't I stop doing quests yesterday? The GM said it was a temporary function for me. Gu Fei said. Everyone raised their eyebrows. Many of them didn't know about what happened in the dungeon. When they heard that the GM had activated a function for Gu Fei, they all came over to gossip. It hasn't been resolved yet? After hearing the gossip, everyone asked. He hasn't told me yet. He said he would tell me after it's resolved. Gu Fei said. You're ruthless. Everyone said. At this time, Yun Zhongmu came over again. Everyone, what are your plans? Yun Zhongmu was busy setting things up and didn't have time to gossip. Moreover, at this moment he was excited to go and destroy the Eagle Group, so he didn't have the mood to listen to any gossip. The guild was organizing things, so he came over to ask these experts how they could participate. We'll just do as we see fit. Han family young master said. Oh, then I'll leave it to you. Yun Zhongmu said politely and then valiantly led his guild. On the Eagle Group's side, Forever told Bison to hurry and teleport back. In the end, Bison angrily said no. Forever didn't understand. Bison could only say that he was tied up and couldn't take out a teleportation scroll from his pocket. He was looking for a friend to help him. Of course, apart from the 30 people in the Eagle Group, there were also other friends. Bison had died and returned home, so there were still people who could help him untie the ropes. However, the person hadn't arrived yet, so Bison could only pitifully hide in a corner and wait. On the other hand, Forever was anxious. Bison couldn't come back, so he could only ask everyone about how he met Qianli. You're saying that he seemed to be waiting for you there? Forever frowned. I think it's very likely. It doesn't look like a coincidence at all. It's as if he knew I was going to appear there. Bison recalled the scene when Gu Fei leaned against the wall and called out to him. Now that he thought about it, that smile was extremely perverted. Could it be that he has some special method to find us? Forever realized the severity of the situation. Although they were an elite group, they were still weak. The reason why they attacked head-on was to establish their dominance and create psychological pressure for the players of the 10 Guild Alliance. The only way they could continue to fight was to hide in the dark and attack whenever they had the chance. However, if their whereabouts were completely grasped by the other party, it would be very troublesome. In this situation, it was better to be safe than sorry. Forever's reaction was extremely fast. After understanding the situation from Bison, he immediately informed everyone. At the same time, a kite on the top floor of the church discovered the movement of some teams in the city. After understanding the coordinates of each team and observing the teams that had been discovered, the kite came to a conclusion. the 10 Society Alliance was accurately tracking them. Retreat, everyone retreat. Retreat from Moonlit City for now. Forever was very decisive. Since they were going to hide, they might as well just leave Moonlit City. Yun Zhongmu and the others weren't slow, but they couldn't compare to Forever's simple analysis. With an order, everyone took their teleportation scrolls and left Moonlit City. In less than a minute, when Gu Fei's coordinates refreshed, he immediately realized that the 14 targets were no longer in Moonlit City. They all ran. Cloud Twilight stared blankly. He was in high spirits and his fighting spirit was high. Yes. Gu Fei replied regretfully. This is called beating the grass to scare the snake. The Han family's young master looked at Gu Fei with disdain. Your appearance was too conspicuous. They must have figured out that we have this method of knowing their location. Don't worry, I'll send a warrant across the city. Gu Fei patted his wind-chasing emblem and randomly chose a target. With a flash of white light, he left. Wait for me to make a scroll and have 2 people come over. Gu Fei mainly wanted to find 2 people to be his assassin assistants. When he sent this message, he had already appeared in this distant and unfamiliar main city. Gu Fei took the teleportation scroll and quickly made the coordinates. In the end, the reply from a faraway place was, make more scrolls, send more people. Gu Fei wasn't in a hurry to send the scrolls. Each target could only be teleported once. Gu Fei didn't want to waste this teleportation. He looked at the distance between his coordinates and the other parties. It was not far, but as he scanned the other party's coordinates, Gu Fei discovered that among the 14 wanted targets in a row, except for the coordinates of number 8 by 3, the other 13 were exactly the same. They're all in the same place. Gu Fei hadn't noticed this before. Now that he thought about it, he guessed that the target must have used a teleportation scroll to return to their hometown. Their teleportation scrolls were all in the same series, and the coordinates were all in the same place. Gu Fei hurriedly ran towards the target, constantly looking at the coordinates along the way. No change, no change. The 2 refreshes in 2 minutes didn't change. These people were clearly still together. In 2 minutes, Gu Fei had set foot on the same coordinates as them. However, when he looked around, he didn't see such a group of people. Gu Fei also knew that the area of a coordinate was quite large. However, this was a long and narrow street. If it were any other street, it definitely wouldn't be this coordinate area. At this moment, he couldn't see the target in the same area. As such, there was only one possibility for the target's existence. On the roofs on the left and right, Gu Fei looked left and right. The houses on the right were low. Gu Fei took a few steps back and jumped to look around, but he didn't see anyone. On the left was a large building that was 3 stories high. He couldn't see the top. Gu Fei looked at the target's coordinates again and still didn't move. Through the process of elimination, he could already tell that the target was currently gathered on the roof of this 3-story building. The houses on the left were not all tall buildings. There were also small houses on the left and right side of this building. Gu Fei gauged the height with his eyes. It was impossible to teleport directly up there. If he used a flying hook, they might all be on the roof, and he would definitely be discovered. How did these guys get up there? While Gu Fei was puzzled, he suddenly couldn't help but laugh. What kind of question was that? Of course they entered through the door. This tall building might be their property, and the roof was an open-air balcony or something. It was easy for them to get up from inside the house, but from outside the building, they could only climb up. Gu Fei's guess was right. This large building was indeed a player's property. Of course, the owner wasn't Eagle Party, but their boss, Matchless Wonder. This large building wasn't bought by Matchless Wonder as a villa. This was one of the large warehouses of Wonder's workshop. The system only provided players with private warehouses, so the capacity was limited. For a large workshop like Wonder's, it wasn't enough. Moreover, the items had to be managed by reliable people, so it couldn't be distributed among thousands of players' private warehouses. As such, they could only use a more realistic style to store the items. The items stored in this kind of player's property weren't discarded, so naturally, they wouldn't be refreshed by the system. At this moment, the 19 members of Eagle Party were gathered on the roof of this warehouse. 8 and 3 were still tied up at the revival point and couldn't come over. Everyone had serious expressions on their faces, waiting for Forever to say something. Drunken Qianli and the others still came, Forever said. From the looks of it, his strength isn't important, but his unknown skill has a huge impact on us. If they can always find out where we are, then it'll be hard for us to continue. The most important thing right now is to find out what kind of skill Qianli is using. The people we bribed from the 10 Meetings Alliance are already suspicious. Yun Zhongmu only brings his trusted aides with him, so we won't be able to find out anything from them. Let's see if there's any other way. Forever said. The people around Qianli should know what he's doing. I wonder if there are any targets we can bribe. Someone said. Perhaps we don't even need to bribe him. If he doesn't treat it as a secret, then we can just ask around through people we know. Another person said. While they were discussing, they suddenly heard someone shout from the street below, "Is there anyone up there?" Since he couldn't go up, then let them come down. Gu Fei's method was simple and direct. Butterfly knot. Today's conclusion is, of course, Happy Mid-Autumn Festival. Chapter 837. The rooftop of the warehouse was where the Eagle Regiment often gathered. There were tables and benches and even 2 reclining chairs. At this time, a group of people were gathered in a circle discussing their next move. Suddenly, they heard a shout from the street below. For a moment, everyone fell silent. They looked at each other and one of them said, "Are they calling us? Who is it?" The other man was puzzled. He stood up and walked to the side of the building. He looked down and saw a man standing in the middle of the street looking up. When he saw half of his body poking out, he quickly waved his hand. That person had originally come over to take a look without much care, but when he saw the attire of the person downstairs, he immediately retracted his body with extreme agility. His expression changed drastically as he said to the other 18 people, "It's 1,000 miles drunk." Everyone was shocked. Forever asked, "How many people?" "Just him," the cowering guy said. "He came so fast." Someone sighed. "Not only fast, but also accurate. How did this guy catch up to us?" Forever pondered. "But no matter what, he's alone. It's our chance." Someone suggested. "But since he dared to come alone." Someone hesitated. The 30 members of the Eagle Group all had different personalities. Some were arrogant, some were humble, some were resolute, and some were hesitant. They couldn't make up their minds and could only look at their leader, Forever. Yongzheng looked calm on the surface, but his heart was in turmoil. 1,000 miles drunk had come too quickly, so quickly that it had exceeded his expectations. It had even found their lair directly and challenged them to a fight from below. Was there an ambush? Some people like to think of things from a negative perspective. It was safer to do things this way. Forever was this kind of person. Just as he was thinking, the shout came from the street again. "I see you all. Come down. This guy is very savage." Someone said. "I'll go take a look." Someone couldn't take it anymore and stood up. "Wait." Forever stopped him. "He can't come up now. Let's think about it first. In my opinion, he's not bluffing. In the current situation, why is he bluffing at us? What's his motive? I can't think of one." Everyone thought about it and agreed. For something like bluffing, for example, when they surrounded 1,000 miles drunk, he would bluff to scare them. Who would take the initiative to rush up to someone else and bluff? This was too bizarre. "Why aren't you saying anything? Are they gone?" Gu Fei continued to shout from downstairs. That was what he said, but his mission clearly showed the coordinates of a bunch of people. The coordinates showed that they hadn't moved at all. However, as he looked around, Gu Fei suddenly discovered that the coordinates of number 8 by 3 were getting closer and closer. Looking left and right, Gu Fei couldn't find any hiding spots on either side of the street. Thinking about it again, the opponent recognized him because of his equipment. Gu Fei took off his outer robe, equipped the Night Streamer sword, and crouched to the side. Gu Fei suddenly didn't say anything. Forever and the others discussed on the rooftop for a while but didn't come to a conclusion. Some wanted to go down and fight to the death with Qianli. Some felt that there was something strange about Qianli's arrogance and suggested to wait and see. Forever was also hesitant and couldn't make up his mind. While they were discussing, they suddenly realized that Qianli drunk had been silent for a long time. One of them wondered, did he leave? Let's go take a look, Forever said. One of them got up and carefully walked to the side of the building. He looked down but didn't see anyone. The person turned around and said, maybe he's just standing by the door, Forever said. Although they were looking down, there were still some blind spots. For example, the position of their door was at an angle to the rooftop. They couldn't see it even if they looked out. Hey, Drunk is back. This person didn't see Qianli drunk, but he saw that Drunk was already downstairs. Forever's expression changed and he quickly shouted, tell him to run. What? The person who looked out was startled, but Forever had already rushed to the side of the building and shouted, Shisan, run. Qianli drunk is down there. As soon as he shouted, the person squatting on the street suddenly stood up. He raised his hand and a black robe was draped over his body. He rushed towards Drunk. 1,000ly drunk. The person from before cried out involuntarily. He was ashamed of his carelessness. Qianli had tricked him with such a simple trick as changing his equipment. The description of a black robe and a purple sword was too deep. Bayashiyama was shocked when he heard the shout, but before he could react, he saw a black figure rushing over. Drunk took out a teleportation scroll in a hurry and used it. As soon as the white light appeared, Gu Fei struck down with a lightning spell. The teleportation formation was destroyed, and Drunk stood there like an idiot. Run, what are you standing there for? Forever said angrily. He turned around and shouted, archers, mages. The people on the rooftop had already gotten up to pay attention. The archers and mages did not need to shout and were already helping. They raised their hands and were about to attack, but Qianli drunk moved again and shrank to the side of the blind spot. The archers immediately stared. The mages could cover the area with AoE spells, but the problem was that Drunk was also there, so AoE spells could not be used. At this time, 81 Shisan had already turned around and wanted to run, but just as he ran a few steps, Gu Fei had already teleported to his side, but he was still not out of his blind spot. The people on the rooftop only had eyes for 81 Shisan, but not for 8,000 miles drunk. All the long-range attackers were anxious and shouted at 81 Shisan, Shisan, go to the middle of the street, lure him out. But Drunk could no longer answer them. He felt lightning flashing and fire burning on his body. Gu Fei's dual flame flash and lightning palm had already greeted him. How could Bai Shisan escape from Gu Fei's attack? He only felt that his life was flowing away like water, and in the blink of an eye he was already at the bottom. Before he died, he could only glare at Gu Fei with great grief and indignation. Everyone on the rooftop was stunned. Drunk died in the blink of an eye, and the attacks they saw from beginning to end were only Gu Fei's sword slash and his outstretched left hand. As Yumi Shisan's closest companions, they knew his strength best, but he died so quickly, without any room to fight back. Several mages were angry. Drunk was not there at this time, so they had no scruples about attacking and bombarded the row of spells in that position. The left and right sides were spread out, and behind him was the room. If Qianli Drunk wanted to dodge, he would have to rush forward, and then he would be exposed to their line of sight. Sure enough, a row of spells blasted down, and Gu Fei had no other choice but to rush forward. Then there was the sound of arrows above his head, and the archers had already launched their attacks. Gu Fei tilted his body slightly, and 2 sharp arrows had already streaked past him. The other arrow was a homing arrow. Gu Fei knocked the homing arrow away with a casual swing of his sword. Looking up, he saw a row of people standing on the rooftop. The heroes of the Eagle group were finally willing to show up. Gu Fei quickly waved his hand. Come down. He was very agile and accurate. At this time, Forever seized this rare opportunity to judge Gu Fei's strength. Sniping was already an archer's sharpest and most ferocious attack. At such a distance, as long as the archer didn't miss his shot, no one would be able to dodge it. However, this 1,000 miles drunk just had to casually tilt his body and let it pass. The arrow brushed past him. He had dodged it narrowly, but it also meant that he had dodged it accurately. As long as he could dodge it by tilting his body, he would not even bother moving half a step. As for the homing arrow, that skill was very slow. It was not surprising that it could be shot down at such a distance. Seeing Gu Fei arrogantly challenge again, some people finally could not take it anymore, and rushed down the street without waiting for Forever to speak. Forever wanted to shout, but the words were at the tip of his tongue. He saw who the three people were, and thought that if he only watched Qianli drunk dodge the arrows, he would not be able to see much of his strength. He might as well test him out. So the words that were at the tip of his tongue changed to a warning. Be careful, if anything goes wrong, return to the house immediately. No need, he's dead for sure. The three people who rushed down were very confident. Maple Blood, ranked 19th on the warrior leaderboard, Flute, ranked 13th on the knight leaderboard, and Qian Mo, ranked 11th on the Grandmaster of Combat leaderboard. The three experts teamed up to attack Qianli drunk. The three of them, what do we do if they get kited by Qianli drunk? Someone upstairs said worriedly. This person was ranked 7th on the priest leaderboard. Someone heard and immediately shouted at Gu Fei, Qianli drunk, our people are coming down, don't run if you have the guts. Gu Fei raised his head and glanced around. He did not know who shouted, but he replied with dissatisfaction, which I saw me run? Don't kite if you have the guts. The direct provocation was a little childish. Gu Fei knew what a kite was and shook his head. I will never use a kite if it's below 3 digits. What 3 digits? The person on the rooftop did not understand. Number of people. Gu Fei said. The people on the rooftop looked at each other. Could it be that the rumor of 1,000 kill was true? Was this person's strength really so terrifying that it defied logic? While they were talking, the three people had already rushed downstairs. The door opened in an instant, and Maple Blood rushed to the front and shouted, 1,000? Fuck me. He only shouted one word, but Gu Fei's reaction was fast. Seeing someone rush out, he swung his Dark Knight light sword, and immediately a wall of electricity was laid out, arriving at the same position as Maple Blood. Maple Blood was immediately sucked into the wall of electricity, twitching. DZ and Qianma did not rush as fast as Maple Blood, and luckily escaped. Seeing Qianli drunk attack them the moment they stepped out, the two of them shouted, Despicable! What's the rush? It's not like I'll die. Gu Fei smiled. The wall of electricity was indeed difficult to electrocute, but the people who were sucked into it would be very embarrassing to break dance. Moreover, they would have to dance for a full 20 seconds. How could they endure it? Moreover, Gu Fei was an enemy, and how could they believe the words of an enemy? DZ waved the staff in his hand and healed Maple Blood's HP. It was clear that he was a radiant knight. Gu Fei smiled and did not pay attention to it. The people on the rooftop still could not see what was happening at the corner of the door, and only saw the flashing of electricity, which was even more terrifying. DZ helped Maple Blood, and at the same time, carefully observed Qianli drunk's movements with Qianma, in case of a sneak attack. At the same time, they were also anxious. Maple Blood was sucked into the electricity, and it seemed like he couldn't come down. At this time, if Qianli drunk attacked, how could he dodge? In the end, Gu Fei just laughed and watched them busy, and did not have any intention of coming up to make a move. At this time, the people on the rooftop had already asked what happened in the channel. The mages and archers wanted to attack Gu Fei again, but when they heard that he even let go of such a good opportunity to attack, they looked at each other and were a little embarrassed to make a move. As for waiting for people to go out, it was a sneak attack. DZ and Qianma did say it was despicable, but in fact, the Eagle group did not think much of it. What sneak attack? How could it be considered despicable? They had sneak attacked the 10 Guild Alliance for a whole day. 20 seconds later, the wall of electricity disappeared, and with DZ's help, Maple Blood's HP did not decrease. But after trembling for almost half a minute, it suddenly stabilized, and Maple Blood was not used to it. Gu Fei smiled in front of him, and raised his sword. Come on! At this time, Gu Fei was full of mana, and this was actually the real reason why he threw the wall of electricity. He knew that the opponents were all masters, so the battle would be more intense, so it was safer to use all his mana. The three of them confidently challenged him to a duel, and Gu Fei was also wary of any strange tricks they might have up their sleeves. Ah! Maple Blood roared and charged forward. Gu Fei frowned. Why didn't the three of them have some sort of mysterious teamwork? This guy was so impulsive. If he knew this would happen, he would not have wasted those 20 seconds. Gu Fei dodged to the side and skillfully swung his sword to chop off the head. Maple Blood was embarrassed from being electrocuted, but he still had some skill. Seeing that Gu Fei had dodged, he immediately used Whirlwind Slash. Gu Fei could not take this skill head-on and could only retreat. Maple Blood did not care about his anger and kept using Whirlwind Slash, sweeping towards Gu Fei. Gu Fei raised his sword and used Lightning Spell on Maple Blood, but he was a warrior, not a mage, and his skill would not be interrupted by an attack. Flute immediately used Holy Heal, and Maple Blood was still in HP. Whirlwind Slash continued to sweep, and Gu Fei could only avoid it. At the same time, he was surprised. How could this guy's anger not be used up after so long? Gu Fei was also a person with a lot of PK experience. He also had a good understanding of the combat characteristics of each class. For a warrior, if they didn't have rage, then they couldn't use any skills. Therefore, rage control was a huge field of study. Wushang, that braggart, often talked about this. But this Maple Blood, who kept using Whirlwind Slash, clearly did not fit the anger control that Unscathed in Battle often talked about. Gu Fei did not dare to face it head-on, and retreated while dodging the Whirlwind Slash. On the side, Flute secretly laughed. He did not directly participate in the battle, and could see clearly from the side. Qianma had already sneaked behind Gu Fei while Qianli's attention was on Maple Blood, and had already silently extended his fist. Qianma was ambushing, and very seriously ambushing. He was not like Bai Yanzai's 3, who shouted when his sword was about to stab someone. From start to finish, Qianma did not make a sound. His right hand was above, his left hand was below, and his palms were facing each other at his waist, silently accumulating power. He, Qianli, and Maple Blood had already formed a straight line. Although Maple Blood was circling, he could clearly see the situation. He was also consciously forcing Qianli into this path. Easy. Flute secretly laughed. He knew what skill Qianma was going to use. If Qianli retreated like this, as long as he stepped into the range of Qianma's Qi wave, Qianma would use Qi to push him into Maple Blood's Whirlwind Slash, and then everything would be over. Die. Flute muttered in his heart, but suddenly his eyes flashed. He saw that Qianli's left hand seemed to be flashing with some kind of light. He retreated another step. This step by Gu Fei finally gave Qianma the chance he had been waiting for. Both of his palms pushed out from his waist, and the surging Qi power gathered for a long time, but Qianma still did not make a sound. A strong wind swept out, and Qianma saw Qianli turn his head. He thought, "It's too late for you to notice now." Who would have thought that when Qianli turned his head, he would actually smile at him, and the person following him would actually disappear? Qianma was shocked, and then he heard Flute and Maple Blood shout at the same time, "Behind you!" Qianma didn't even turn his head to look, and wanted to turn around to dodge, but a palm was already pressing down on his back. "Go!" He heard Qianli say to him, and then he felt his body go numb like he was electrocuted, and then he flew out uncontrollably. In the blink of an eye, the person who was pushed into Maple Blood's Whirlwind Slash wasn't Qianli, but him. Maple Blood obviously wouldn't drag his own brother to death, and seeing that it was Qianma, he immediately stopped the skill. Qianma wasn't injured, but he crashed into Maple Blood. Gu Fei shot forward, and the three were shocked. Gu Fei's target wasn't Maple Blood or Qianma, but Flute. "Why are you just watching and not doing anything?" Gu Fei smiled, and his sword was already slashing down towards Flute. Flute hurriedly raised his scepter. Qianli's sword didn't look fast, and it seemed like he could block it with this move. But Gu Fei's sword changed direction at this moment, and with a pull and a push, he immediately changed his attack style. Everything happened in the blink of an eye, and Flute didn't even see what technique it was. He only felt that he was like an idiot, and Gu Fei's sword was clearly aimed at his chest. Flames rolled up, and Gu Fei chanted dual flame flash. Flute knew that it was impossible to dodge, but he used his skills very smoothly. Blessing and holy healing fell on him almost at the same time as the flames. Of course, Flute didn't die, and Maple Blood and Qianmo rushed over to help. One used Charge, and the other Grandmaster of Combat's horse-riding Meteor. Their speeds were almost the same. In a flash, Gu Fei had actually snuck behind the Flute, and very unkindly pushed the Flute forward. In Gu Fei's wanted list, these three were all on it. He was busy, but in reality he wanted to kill them with a borrowed knife. 8 and Zison were sent to prison because they had no other choice. For these people, Gu Fei felt that he had to think of a way. Flute was pushed forward, and it was another test of Qianmo and Maple Blood skills. Gu Fei was about to admire the results, when he suddenly suffered a heavy blow to his abdomen. Gu Fei's body flew backwards, and he was very confused. Flute's back was still facing him, and he actually didn't know what attack hit him. At the same time, Maple Blood had already stopped Charge, and suddenly jumped over Flute's head. Earth-splitting slash. Chapter 8:38. Gu Fei was flabbergasted. He had clearly been attacked, but he didn't know how the attack came about. This was something he had never even dreamed of. However, there was no time for him to think too much. His body that was sent flying was still unstable, but Maple Blood had already flown over DZ's head and descended from the sky. His speed was even faster than Gu Fei's. Gu Fei couldn't do anything in this situation. He could only casually raise his sword to meet the attack. Maple Blood laughed coldly. The power of earth-shattering slash wasn't something that could be blocked so easily. Although he knew that the damage dealt by skills was determined by the system, Maple Blood still subconsciously tightened his grip on the hilt of his sword. He secretly exerted all of his strength, wishing that he could slice Thousand Miles Drunk in half with this strike. The two swords clashed. Maple Blood felt that the sword he blocked had no power at all. He inwardly mocked Qianli's overestimation of his abilities. However, he didn't expect Qianli's Drunken to fly out horizontally the instant the two swords clashed. It looked like he had been sent flying by Maple Blood's sword. However, with the power of Maple Blood's sword, Qianli's Drunken was actually sent flying horizontally. Maple Blood felt that it was inconceivable. However, no matter how incomprehensible it was the truth. Maple Blood's sword struck the ground in the blink of an eye. The earth trembled as if it was going to split open. It lived up to the name of earth-shattering slash. As for Gu Fei, he was sent flying to the ground, but he was unable to maintain his balance. He stumbled and fell to the ground, but with his quick reflexes, he rolled and got up again. It was no different from not falling at all. Just now, Gu Fei had changed the power of the attack to fly horizontally. The technique was extremely difficult. Even he couldn't control his body after completing this change. Fortunately, he dodged the damage from this skill. Gu Fei flew out of earth-shattering slash's attack range. However, his opponent's reaction was extremely fast. Although Maple Blood was still in the posture of landing with earth-shatter slash, Flute was already waving his scepter and chasing after Gu Fei. He wanted to take advantage of Gu Fei's unstable landing to continue to deal a heavy blow. But after Gu Fei rolled on the ground, it was as if nothing had happened. When he saw Flute rushing towards him, he did not hesitate to twist his body to meet him. With a flick of his wrist, he slashed his sword towards Flute. Flute hurriedly waved his scepter to block, but Gu Fei casually spun his flute and blocked nothing. Seeing that the tip of the sword was about to reach him, Gu Fei was just about to open his mouth to chant when he suddenly felt a pain in his chest. Another inexplicable strike had struck him. This time, he didn't fly away, but the loss of HP showed that the damage of this attack wasn't light. After suffering the same loss twice, Gu Fei wasn't so slow that he didn't notice anything. He carefully observed the situation on the battlefield and noticed something. In these two exchanges, he didn't pay much attention to the Grandmaster of Combat called Qianmo because this person always seemed to be half a beat too slow. Whenever he charged, he would rush behind others. Just like now, he also came to chase after Gu Fei, But as a standard combat class, he wasn't even as fast as a support-type paladin. He was currently still behind Flute. Gu Fei didn't see what he did, but he could already conclude that these two attacks were probably caused by this guy. Gu Fei watched carefully. Maple Blood and Flute didn't do anything at all. Even using the elimination method, he could tell that this guy was behind this. But as for what method he used, Gu Fei didn't know. It was probably some kind of strange game skill. As soon as Gu Fei thought about it, he began to be wary of Qinma. He stepped to the side, wanting Qinma to appear in his field of vision. But this guy seemed to have steeled his heart and refused to show himself. Flute also cooperated and tried to hide him behind his back. Gu Fei thought of something and quickly took 2 steps back. He casually summoned an area of effect spell. In the end, the two of them had to keep dodging at the same time. Then, they continued to rush towards Gu Fei. Maple Blood had also arrived, rushing side by side with DZ, while Qinma continued to hide behind them. Gu Fei couldn't figure out his opponent's strangeness at the moment, so he just avoided fighting. His movement speed was much faster than the three of them. Once he started running, it was obvious that the three of them wouldn't be able to catch up. But immediately after that, the rooftop was filled with whistles, laughter, and taunts. In any case, they were all looking down on Gu Fei. At this time, he was running around in circles, which was very much the essence of kiting. Forever didn't engage in such meaningless provocations. He was only happy to see the three of them fighting Qianli to a standstill. At this time, he also didn't want to continue leading the group to enjoy the show. With a wave of his hand in the channel, the rest of the members of the Eagle group went downstairs. Gu Fei was very observant. He already saw that the people on the rooftop were all coming down and didn't want to continue watching the show. He finally waited for the cooldown of his teleportation to be over. Suddenly, he rushed towards the three of them. The three of them greeted him calmly. Gu Fei didn't say anything and immediately teleported behind the two in the front row. But the three of them were obviously prepared for Gu Fei's teleportation. When they saw Gu Fei disappear, they knew where he would appear. The moment Maple Blood and Flute turned around, Qianma passed between them. The three of them changed their positions. The two of them were still in front, and Qianma was behind. Gu Fei didn't succeed in catching Qianma, but seeing that the three of them maintained their positions, he became more and more sure of his deduction. He didn't hesitate to take a step back and ask the three of them with a smile, "Hit the cow across the mountain?" The three of them were shocked. They didn't think that in just a few rounds, Qianli would be able to predict Qianma's skill. That's right, it was hit the cow across the mountain. Gu Fei even guessed the name of the skill word for word. After all, it was a term that was closer to Gu Fei's expertise. In the game, this skill belonged to the Qi Master after the Grandmaster of Combat class advancement. It was a support skill that could be used in conjunction with other skills. Any other offensive skills could complement this hit the cow across the mountain. As the name suggested, it could deal damage through walls, trees, and even people. This damage was weaker than the original skill's direct attack. But as the user's proficiency in the skill increased, the damage would continue to be adjusted. With Qianma's current proficiency, not only would the damage not be weakened, it would even be increased. In the parallel world, where there was no immunity to attacks from the same team, this skill was quite useful. Qianma fought with the Eagle Party, and was most used to this method, hiding behind others to attack. This way, the opponent wouldn't be able to see his attack. Even someone like Gu Fei couldn't defend against it. He could only helplessly increase the distance between them. The three of them couldn't move as fast as Gu Fei, so they couldn't catch up to him. But there was nothing they could do. The two of them were in a stalemate, and Eternal had already led the others downstairs. The two teams were online. Other than 8 and West 3, who had been sent to the dungeon by Gu Fei, all 19 of them were present. "You're all here." Gu Fei nodded, a gratified expression on his face. He didn't look like he was helpless against Qianma's hit the cow from a distance. "Don't run if you have the guts," someone from the Eagle Party shouted at Gu Fei. "I came all the way here, why would I run?" Gu Fei said, "Then why don't you just stand there and fight us? Why are you running around?" When the others saw that Gu Fei was wary of Qianma's hit the cow from a distance and could only use his movement speed to deal with it, They immediately mocked him. But Gu Fei laughed back. Of course, don't you run when you're piking? Gu Fei didn't think that running around was embarrassing. He was proud of his footwork. "TSK, you sure have a lot of excuses," someone from the Eagle Party said. While they were bickering, Forever had already started to surround Gu Fei. Gu Fei seemed to be having a good time bickering and didn't notice. Just as everyone was in position and Forever was about to give the order to attack, Gu Fei suddenly raised his finger and teleported to the roof. "Fuck, don't run," someone yelled. The only reply he got was a bolt of lightning from the sky. Gu Fei stood on the roof and looked at him with disdain. "Who's running? Then why don't you come down?" The people from the Eagle Party were helpless. Of course, the roof wasn't as high as the roof of their warehouse, but it wasn't a place that normal players could go up whenever they wanted. Gu Fei flashed forward, and the Eagle Party's melee players couldn't attack him. They were all blinded. They only had 5 ranged players, including mages and archers. They had tried to attack Gu Fei from above, but the results weren't ideal. At this moment, Gu Fei was looking down from the high ground, using long-range spells and throwing rubbish at people from time to time. Even though the damage was minor, the people who were hit were in a bad mood. Forever commanded a few ranged players to attack a few times, which Gu Fei easily dodged. Then, he counterattacked with AoE spells, which were easily dodged by the players of the Eagle Party with his garbage cast time. More importantly, most of the players on the street were unable to use their strength and were hopping around anxiously. Gu Fei was now standing high up and everyone could see him. Qianma, who had tricked Gu Fei twice, was taken care of by him. Even though Qianma dodged most of his attacks, there wasn't a single moment of rest for him. It was tiring for him to keep running around. Gu Fei was getting more and more excited as he kept his eyes on Qianma. The other 18 members of the Eagle Party were feeling lonely. Gu Fei didn't seem to care about them anymore. Sometimes they would dodge, but that was only because Gu Fei accidentally hit them when he was bombarding Qianma. "Stop him, stop him." Qianma was panicking. He had been chased and attacked. He had been hit by lightning spells twice, and he almost crashed into a wall of electricity once. Another time, he was hit by an AoE spell. Even though he wasn't in danger with the help of the priest, he was still tired from being chased and attacked. What was even more infuriating was that the 18 brothers around him were all staring at him as if they couldn't help at all. Qianma started to complain in frustration. "You're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.